Okay, we'll call the meeting to order, back to order. And I move that the process for Wheatland County Council meeting as it pertains to scheduled public hearings will be as follows. Public hearing, first reading if required, consideration for further readings of bylaws for those public hearings that have been closed. Further move that the above process will take place with the absence of resolutions to go into and out of council before and after each public hearing. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Right. So we'll open the public hearings. It'll be on item 3.1A, bylaw 2016-27. All the proper notifications been done.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we have.
Is there any member of the public have any concerns of any councillor listening to this public hearing? Not seeing any, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is redesignation application LU 2016-38 and bylaw 2016-27. Our recommendation is that council choose option 1, approval of LU 2016-38, the Elliott redesignation application, for the following reasons. The proposed redesignation generally aligns with the objectives and policies of the municipal development plan, as it was drafted to minimize future impacts on adjacent parcels and prevent further fragmentation of agricultural land. Number 2, the draft direct control district brings the parcel into alignment with the land use bylaw by only allowing for one dwelling on the parcel. The second dwelling would have to be removed down the road with the development permit stage or remain in violation of the land use bylaw. So there's option 1, motion 1, that bylaw 2016-27 be given second reading, and motion 2, that it be given third and final reading. Bit of background, the purpose is to redesignate 41.73 acres from agricultural general district to direct control district to support the existing mix of uses present on the subject parcel. This includes a recreational vehicle storage facility, a cattle operation, and 2 dwellings. Relevant policies, the municipal development plan, and the land use bylaw. I'm now going to go down into the planning report. For council to look at as I go through the report. Here's the location plan of the subject lands. It's adjacent to Highway 817 and approximately 3.9 kilometers west of Eagle Lake. The owners of the parcel are Derek and Trevor Elliott, and the applicants are also Derek and Trevor Elliott. The legal description is Block 1, Plan 941-0521. Existing land use, agricultural general, and as noted, the proposed land use is direct control district, and it'll be direct control district number 9. We'll go down to the area plan here. This shows the parcel. We have the highway here, the primary dwelling, the rental property that's present. This is the RV storage access, and the RV storage is located here in the back corner of the parcel. We have the pipeline and then an active well. This is the bylaw map as well. So I'll go through the direct control district after I go through the report. So in terms of our policy analysis, the proposed redesignation partially aligns with the MDP, as the proposed DC does not allow for additional agricultural lands to be converted to alternative land uses. The proposed direct control district works to align this parcel with the objectives and policies of section 3.1 of the MDP by preventing the additional expansion of the RV storage facility onto the existing cattle operation. Through the designation of different land use cells within the DC district, this prevents further commercial industrial encroachment onto agricultural lands while also allowing the existing business to continue to operate. Aligns with the agricultural objective of protecting existing agricultural lands and minimizing the fragmentation of and effects on agricultural lands. Part 2, the proposed redesignation also aligns with the natural areas policies and water resources policy, as the existing RV storage is located in a corner of the parcel far from any environmentally sensitive areas, in staff's opinion, and visible water bodies. Although there are conflicts with this proposed rezoning and a number of the policies listed in the MDP in terms of commercial and industrial development, the proposal does align with policy 3.7.2, which states that separation or buffering from residential sites is encouraged. The RV storage is well located in the back corner of the parcel, with fencing and landscaping to create a buffer from residential dwellings on the parcel, as well as from adjacent residential dwellings on adjacent parcels. Although the proposed development does not align with the objectives and policies of situating commercial industrial development in designated areas, the nature of this particular use does provide some rationale as to this location for storage. In terms of the land use bylaw, the parcel is not currently in alignment with the land use bylaw as there are 2 dwellings on the parcel. The land use bylaw states that there can only be 1 dwelling on parcels that are less than 80 acres in size. As this parcel is only 41.73 acres, it does not meet this requirement. Staff conducted a historical review of the Elliott file and has found that this dwelling has been in violation since 1977, where a report states that, quotes, a mobile home currently exists on the property. The applicant had signed a statutory declaration at the time stating that the mobile home will be removed from the property after the new dwelling has been occupied. Of course, this was multiple owners ago. This isn't the current landowners of the parcel. Although this is quite old, the dwelling would not be grandfathered through the numerous LUBs that have taken place since then, as it has never been compliant and the appropriate permits not obtained. It has not been listed as a use in the proposed direct control district, as this would provide a special exemption for a parcel that is already unique in terms of the varied land uses already present. It's been noted by the owner applicant that this dwelling is used for rental purposes. The proposed redesignation will be required to follow the rules and regulations of the land use bylaw. All future development proposals will be required to align with the permitted and discretionary uses specific to the 2 development cells within the DC district. I'll now go through the agency comments. Alberta Health Services had their standard comments in regards to this application for subdivisions. Alberta Transportation, we haven't received comments from them. However, there was a roadside development permit issued October 15th, 2009 for this development, and it has not changed in scale since that roadside development permit was issued. TELUS noted that they have no objections. Western Irrigation District noted they have no objections. Development Services, so we then circulated internally. The only comment received was Development Services noted that the second dwelling on the parcel does not have valid permits. In terms of circulation, the proposal was circulated to all landowners within a half mile of the subject lands. No letters were received in either support or objection at the time that this report was prepared. So just, as noted previously, the 2 options for council's consideration, second and third reading, or that application 2016-38 be refused, and we are recommending approval. I do want to go through the direct control district briefly with you before I conclude my presentation, so I'll just go down to that. So it's drafted as direct control district 9. So this allows direct control by council over any development of land located here. So what that means is any uses that are listed as discretionary go to council for a decision instead of municipal planning commission. Any uses that are listed as permitted go to the development officers as is standard. We have the general regulations here. We then break out this DC into 2 cells. There's cell 1, which is the agricultural cell. So it allows for the traditional agricultural uses and residential uses on the parcel. The setback requirements. Then the second cell is the recreational vehicle storage. And recreational vehicle storage is a permitted use. So if this DC is approved, this will be permanent. They would then come in for their development permit for recreational vehicle storage, and that would also be permanent. It wouldn't be how it's currently been where it's an SUB and they have to keep coming back every couple of years. This DC creates a level of permanence for the applicant. Special regulation is just ensuring landscaping and the screening plan is maintained for the recreational vehicle storage component of this direct control district. As noted previously, here's the map. The red area will be the agricultural and where the residential is. The blue area is where the RV storage site is currently existing. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Brenda?
So on those maps, should we not include the access for cell two? So, because currently you have it zoned two different, cell one, cell two, but we should actually show, I would think that we would show access, current access anyway.
Through the chair, both uses, the agricultural, residential, and the RV, they do share the same access. You could choose to add the cell to show the driveway. However, staff reviewed it and determined there was no point because the access isn't going to have any uses or require any permits. It's just the development. It's just the access to the RV storage, and the cell 2 uses are specific to that RV storage site. So including the access, you could do it. It wouldn't change anything either way.
Any other questions? Rex?
Just for clarification through the chair, so what's happening with the rental property as part of this? Like, it's kind of not part of this application, but there's some implications with the application?
Through the chair, that's correct. The second rental property, through land use, there's no mechanisms for the planning department to require that it be removed from the parcel, even though it's not in compliance. So what this direct control district is, it just allows for the one dwelling to exist on the parcel. So if they were to come in down the road for a development permit, then that rental property would have to be addressed at that point and removed if the DC is as it's currently drafted.
So if this goes through the way it is, though, things can just stay the same technically?
Through the chair, for a few months, but when they come in for their development permit for the recreational vehicle storage, then the second dwelling would be an issue. If council has a concern with that, they'd have to look in the general regulations. Let me just go to the DC district.
Well, to me, 40 years is a concern.
Yeah.
It's hard to, we want to follow the rules. We develop the rules for a reason, but 40 years is a huge concern for me to try and enforce.
Through the chair, if council wishes to allow for the second dwelling unit to continue, you'd have to remove general regulation C would be removed. And then as well, an option would be to potentially, we'd have to look into it further, whether it would fit our criteria of dwelling garden suite with the new land use bylaw. I'm not sure if it would, but we could add that use into cell 1, and then that could be a potential mechanism for them to obtain the necessary permits for it to continue down the road.
Any other questions?
Through the chair, do they have their own well, the second building? Does it have its own well and sewage supply, please?
Through the chair, I believe it's shared, but the applicant can provide further detail on that. At the rezoning stage, we don't get as much into the technical, but I believe it's shared, but they can confirm.
Applicant wish to say something? Yes, sir. Please come up now and so we all can hear you. And for your information, we're taping you too.
Okay, yeah. My name's Trevor Elliott. This is Derek Elliott. Just to answer the question, there is the one well which is shared by the house as well as this other secondary use trailer, which, and again, we were equally surprised that it was an illegal, because it had been there for 40 years, and we're actually the third owners after Barlow to purchase it, and it never came up until this recent application. But what I can tell you about that particular property, when we purchased it, there was a ranch hand, if you will, in that trailer, and they helped us, he helped us with the first 5 years with the operation, our farm operation. It did, once he left, we had a separate tenant living there, but today we have an elderly lady who's retired, and she really does act as our assistant at the ranch and looks after the livestock, and she's more our eyes and ears when we aren't around. So we are using it as kind of a farmhand property of the secondary use trailer. But she has her own septic field, and then we have the one water that they both share.
Okay. Any other questions for the Elliottes? Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
I'll just add quickly, again, it was surprising to me with that trailer because it was, however the verbiage is, they lived in that trailer while the house was built, I think back in 1977. So once the house was ready for occupation, they were supposed to remove the trailer. So again, it is non-conforming, but I would be quick to obviously apply for farmhand as a secondary garden suite because, you know, I don't want to kick someone down the road, but it's like been there forever. If the wind doesn't take it down, you know, she's not leaving. So we find her very useful. She's from a farm. It's not somebody we're just, you know, renting a place to, so she does help out
Okay.
quite often.
Okay, thanks for that, Rex. Yep.
Yeah, so I guess that goes back to what I was talking about through the chair to Colton. If, it sounds like staff here would be accommodating to figure out a garden suite situation or something that might bring them back into confirmation and everybody's happy and we can move on.
Through the chair, we just did some further work into it, and what we'd actually recommend is going with dwelling employee. That's a new use in the land use bylaw, given that it's someone that helps out with that particular, the land. So that would, what we'd do is, you'd remove, or we'd edit C, general regulation C, to say a maximum of 2 dwelling units. So that would allow for 2, because if you don't have that regulation in there with it being a DC, you could technically go up 10, 20, 30, wherever you want to go. So we'd recommend this is changed to a maximum of 2 dwelling units, and then we add as a permitted use in cell 1, dwelling employee, or dwelling, and we could add dwelling manufactured as well, just to have it so it's clear. So that manufactured there, if it was to switch from not being an employee, just someone living there, dwelling manufactured would be the option.
Okay.
Leave it in there.
Any other questions? Brenda,
So we're going to make that change then to 2?
Council's direction.
if we do, if we want to. Any other questions or comments from the ratepayers? Not seeing any. Bernice?
So through the chair, so would it be best to word it as maximum of 2 dwellings, like you had mentioned, or what's the way you would work the best for the wording?
So staff stands by this as it's currently drafted. If council wishes to have this altered in what you're looking to do, it would be altered to a maximum of 2 dwelling units is allowed within cell 1 for
Okay.
C. And then you'd also want to add under permitted uses, dwelling, comma, employee, and dwelling, comma, manufactured.
Okay. Any other comments? One last time. Not seeing any. I'll close the public hearing for bylaw 2016-27. We're now back in council. Council's wishes.
I also move second reading for bylaw 2016-27 with the change to the maximum of 2 dwellings, whatever he said.
Amend
And adding in, oh, sorry.
in the permitted use,
Permitted use.
a maximum of
dwelling.
2, okay, and then,
Permitted use of the dwelling, yeah.
okay, you got that, Colton? Okay. Dwelling and permitted use, yeah.
Through the chair for cell 1, just to clarify.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried. Council's wish to do 3rd reading?
Yes.
Bernice, move 3rd reading? You said yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, any questions?
Oh, sorry, Alice.
All in favor? Carried. Thanks for coming in. Okay, I will go to 3.1B, public hearing for bylaw 2016-63 is now open. All proper notifications been done.
Mr. Chairman, with regards to circulation to adjacents, yes, they have.
Okay. Is there any member of the public have any concerns of any counselor listening to this public hearing? Not seeing any, please continue.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
So this is a reconvened public hearing for land use application LU 2016-82 as it applies to bylaw 2016-63. The owners are 1360848 Alberta Limited, and the applicant is Greg Royer with the Calgary Zoo. The legal description is lots 3 and 5 of Block 1, Plan 0611627, lots 7 and 8 of Block 1, Plan 0611628, and parcels 6 and 9 of Plan 9111987 in Division 2, represents a total of 333.42 acres. I'm just going to briefly touch on my staff report. It's a repeat essentially of what we had before. To just give you a little bit of additional background, what's happened since this went to council on April 18th. The subject lands are 6 parcels represented all as an agricultural general district. The application is to redesignate all 6 parcels to a direct control district. Purpose and intent is to allow for a proposed animal sanctuary under the management and ownership of the Calgary Zoo. By way of background information, public hearing was held on April 18th of this year, and the public hearing was recessed by council to allow the applicant an opportunity to host an open house to address any questions, concerns of area residents. The applicant held an open house on April 27th. Approximately 80 people were in attendance during that 3-hour period. What you have before you that was handed out is a summary of the open house provided by the applicant. The applicant will be up here in a few seconds or a few minutes and add some additional information on what they gleaned from the open house and the heavy attendance. A synopsis of the open house again is attached, was provided to you here. I was in attendance at the open house as a county employee and file manager, and following a discussion with the applicant after the open house, it was determined that the proposed direct control district required no further amendments as a result of the questions, concerns, inquiries. A lot of the individuals who were present, from what I could gather, were there just gleaming information on what it was all about in more details. A few interesting questions with regards to what-if scenarios that I understand were handled fairly well by the, I think we had 5 or 6 Calgary Zoo staff present, and Mr. Royer can speak to that in more detail. So with that, I will conclude my presentation at this point, and if there isn't any other questions, and Mr. Royer, I'll be more than happy to get up and speak, as well as another representative from the Calgary Zoo.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
I just have one. Who is
Go
the
ahead.
author of, who actually prepared this?
The author of that summary is the Mr. Royer with the Calgary Zoo. So the
Okay.
gentleman who will be speaking here shortly authored that summary.
No, I just wondered whether it was staff or, thank.
Any other questions, council? Applicant wish to say something?
Hello, I'm Jamie Dorgan. I'm the Director of Animal Care at the Calgary Zoo. Just wanted to briefly outline a little bit about our animal care program and clarify a few things for really because a lot of the questions that have occurred over the last month or so. So at the Calgary Zoological Society operates the Calgary Zoo in the city of Calgary, and we also operate an off-site wildlife conservation center currently south of Calgary. This plan is to move the conservation center, as you know. Both the conservation center and the zoo are operated as one entity that works that is regulated within the Alberta Zoo standards. So our whole program falls within the Alberta Zoo standards and as part of the Zoo Act that's part of ESRD within the province of Alberta. We also comply with all CFIA regulations, which would be very similar to a lot of agricultural regulations as well. Anytime we are doing anything with animals, both on site and moving them on and off, we're complying with all these different programs, both provincially and federally. The other components that we feel are important to our operation are we are accredited by the Canadian Association of Zoos and Aquariums, as well as by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, which is a larger accrediting body based in the US, but also has Canadian members. Both these accrediting bodies really consist of about the 10% best zoos in North America and hold all those zoos that are members to very high standards which we feel is very important for our reputation and demonstrates how important our care for our animals are from a welfare perspective, from health of animals, and every component of our operations. So anytime we are moving animals to or from the zoo or from our conservation center, we're following very strict guidelines for how we care for animals, and specifically with health. A huge part of what we do is conservation, and really we think that's the most important thing that we do. In order for us to participate successfully in our conservation programs, it's critical that we maintain very healthy animals, and anytime an animal is coming and going, we invest a lot of time, effort, and financial investment in making sure that our population of animals is healthy and it is not impacted by any animals that are coming and going.
Hi, I'm Greg Royer, the Chief Operating Officer of the Calgary Zoo. The Calgary Zoo has been around for 88 years and has developed one of the top 10 most trusted brands in Alberta during that time. And I know my gray hair suggests otherwise, but I have very little to do with the development of that reputation. I've only been with the zoo for 2 years. But I've been very impressed with the quality of the operation and the concerns the operation has for the communities that it operates in. In addition to operating for 88 years from our location in Calgary, we've also operated for 34 years from the location off Dunbow Road, just southeast of Calgary, and have developed strong relations with the community and strong relations with the county. Recently we held our open house. We gave you a synopsis of the open house. To ensure that we had as large a turnout as possible so that we could tell people about what we were doing, fully inform them. Instead of a half-mile circumference, we went to a mile and a half. The county delivered via mail notices of it, and we hand-delivered notices of the open house as well to ensure that people were aware of it. We also had stories written in the Calgary Herald, on CBC, the Calgary Sun, and both Strathmore papers to ensure that people were aware that this was going on, that we weren't surprising anybody. We had 80 people show up for the open house. Overall, the #1 largest concern that was brought up at the open house was the hunting that goes on across the lake from us. Ducks Unlimited was there. We had some very good meetings with them, talked about the process of controlling the issues of sound. We feel very comfortable that our animals will adapt to whatever sound comes out of there, and we have some engineering abilities to modify any concern with sound. Our animals at the Calgary Zoo have learned to handle airplanes going over their heads with some regularity. The strongest thing that we feel we bring to the county of Wheatland is a very, very strong reputation for caring for animals, for working with conservation, and for caring about the communities that we work in. We look forward to working here if that's the decision of the council, and we thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Any other member of the public have anything they'd like to say? Please.
Hi, Stuart Thiessen, Jamaica Farms. We're about 2-some miles to the east, to the west. I'm neither for nor against it. My question, or where I'm lacking understanding, is what effect will this redesignation have on agricultural land outside of it? So these are questions I couldn't answer. That's why I came here. Is this property then going to affect what people can do on the agricultural land beside? So hypothetically, if I changed my farm, which I have a right to, which I'm not going to, but changed it to chickens, would the zoo be concerned? I did go to the open house. I thought the people were wonderful there. basically, I'm asking that somehow we codify what the people in the room said, no, we would not interfere with agriculture. So my throw out to the council is there a way to just make sure that, you know, later on it doesn't come around that, well, no, we would really like to have no chickens within a, you know, X or, that is my one request. My second one, council could consider, again, at the meeting, I was told it was going to be mainly North American animals, which, again, talking to our vets, not an issue. Is there a way to at least every time they introduce a new species that we have some input? And I'm not saying I'm going to have any concerns, but when I talk to the vets about risk assessment, of course, with the animals you have now, there's zero. They're not uncomfortable at all. But in the future, again, we're all going to change. Is it, you know, if I change species on my farm, you guys, the public has input. And I would ask that the same be perhaps allowed here.
Okay.
Okay, and the only one I wanted to clarify, because at the last meeting, I just want to clarify, it was represented that CFIA would pay for any disease. Okay, that is, I think they misspoke. CFIA will pay for any animal they ordered destroyed. Okay, CFIA will not pay for animals that naturally die. CFIA will not pay for quarantines or any of the associated costs. And if you actually look at what happened down with the brain going dead, what are they having? Down in Medicine Hat, sorry.
Tuberculosis?
Yeah.
TB.
That actually was a separated, a negotiated agri-recovery program, ad hoc. So just, we aren't covered immediately if there's an issue, is all I want to point out. That said, in fairness, sitting down with the vets, with the species they have, we have very little concern.
Okay. I'll get Colton. Can you answer any of them questions off the top of your head? I mean,
That's what managers are for. Delegate to him.
Oh, okay, we'll let Gary talk then.
I'm sure Colton meant to say file managers, which is what I am on this file. Okay, so let's see if I can catch some of the questions here. With regards to, does the direct control district have any influence on adjacent parcels? In a nutshell, no. Just like any land use. Indirectly, perhaps, but directly what happens on this parcel and the rules and regulations set up for this parcel or to this parcel and this parcel only. It doesn't speak to what somebody can do adjacent to them or a parcel or two over or 2 miles over. It just speaks to this piece. So from that perspective, it comes down to, I guess, a good neighborly issue. I think the Calgary Zoo's shown to be exemplary future neighbors. The ability to go and run newspaper ads across the board and have up to 80 people attend an information session, I think is a good show of character with regards to where they want to be as neighbors. And I know Mr. Royer and I have had a few conversations about this. And his indication that I said, well, you're going like 1.5 mile radius, everything else, you're exceeding where we're at normally for circulation. And he sort of saw it more as a community outreach, as a new lander outreach in a large extent. So I can't speak to what his relationship be or what the Calgary Zoo's relationship will be with its neighbors. But I think from what we're seeing so far, it'll probably be a pretty strong one within the limits of what adjacent landowners can do for each other. Again, no controls on the DC as it applies to other parcels.
So it's not the same as an ILO where intensive livestock
No, our
in
CFO.
future, yeah, CFO.
Yeah, correct. CFOs are regulated under NRCB. They fall under the Calgary Zoo, or the Zoo Act, sorry. And it's my understanding that it's different rules regulations, so they don't have the same rules that follow within the CFO. Now, Mr. Royer's probably way more up to speed on that, and he can speak to it. Okay. So if I am misspoken, he can clarify. But our understanding is it's no different than having the current owner on here now runs cattle on the land. It's no different.
Okay.
If anything, the applicant and the direct control district is set up to contain the animals and provide buffers around the property lines, be it Nameka Lake or Siksika Nation or to the north, where we predominantly have Alberta government lands owned. There's only a few little spots to the northwest that are actually owned by private individuals, immediately adjacent to. So from this perspective, and I alluded to this back in April, this is probably the most perfect site for this type of activity because they require a fair amount of buffering as well to ensure the species, various species survive. With regards to the other question on having say or input or feedback into if the different species come on site, The direct control bylaw doesn't regulate the species. We've been informed what the species could be on the site. The site plan takes that into account. Certain pens are designed a certain way for certain species, but that doesn't control or limit what types of species can be on there. It doesn't require them also to have the 4 or 5 that they've made reference to as mandatory either. As any other landowner, you can bring on dogs, cats, livestock, and it's pretty much whatever you can do within the rules of AOPA, rules of the land use bylaw, if there is any. As you know, with our new land use bylaw, we have no animal control units or animal units in play anymore. So this is no different. If they have any new species that they want to take on the site, they're more than welcome to bring them on. Nothing in the DC bylaw limits it. Again, I would hazard a guess. The Calgary Zoo is coming across as wanting to be very good neighbors. I would be surprised if they didn't inform everybody just as a heads up, even if it's just for educational purposes. But then again, Mr. Royer can speak to some of that if you'd like.
Do you have any comments onto that?
Just a couple quick ones.
Okay.
The issue of what other people do on their property, as I mentioned, we've been on Dunbow Road for 34 years. We've never, ever commented on anybody else's animals, what they choose to have, what they don't choose to have. We have a whole team of animal care staff, including 2 vets with 51 years of experience. We can handle what anybody else decides to do. And we'd have the same concern that anybody would have is healthy animals. And as long as the animals are healthy, we don't care what they are. The other question about the type of animals, we're fairly well regulated. First of all, the Alberta government regulates what animals we have. So every year we have to put out an application as to what animals we will have, and we have to show that we have the ability to care for them. Second is AZA and CAZA both have very, very specific restrictions about the type of facilities that we can keep an animal in. So if we decided to have, say, a tiger, which we won't, by the way, but if we ever decided to have a tiger, tigers require very specific buildings, which would require us to come back to the county to get permits to build what is necessary for a tiger to habitat, to be on that site. And at that point in time, because it's not part of our direct control district application, we would have to go through the public hearing process again. So we are, I mean, we're not specifically restricted from a number of animals, but any significant outlying unusual animal will require unusual facilities, and those unusual facilities will have to be brought back through a public hearing process.
Plus the notification that goes with it.
And all, yes, all the processes that go with it.
Okay. Any other question? Please. Yeah, you can have an opportunity.
Yeah, no violence.
I'm Derry Massey from New Trend Cattle Company. We are adjacent landowners to this particular property that's applying for application. Good afternoon, Mr. Malinka, councillors and guests. I'm going to read you a letter, and then there'll be some opportunity for some pauses and stuff. We are here with regards to the said lands as described in as 333.42 acres that is zoned Ag General. 6 parcels of land and 6 separate titles. These lots are legally described as lots 3 and 5, block 1, plan 061-1627, lots 7 and 8, block 1, plan 061-1628, and parcels 6 and 9, plan 911-1987. The applicant has applied for redesignation to direct control, file LU 2016-82. Since the last meeting, we have had the opportunity to follow up and do more research on this facility. The intent of redesignation still leaves us feeling very uneasy. The intent is to bring a multi-species facility into this area. This is a conflicting statement. There is conflicting statements made by zoo organizers that this is a Western Hemisphere or Western Canadian endangered species compound. We already have had exceptions with this endangered species of a horse that is not from Western Canada. How many species are going to end up there? If this is directly controlled in the county, who who is going to make the decisions on the flow of animals and regulate the written bylaws that will pertain to this facility. Because this is the Calgary Zoo, one cannot assume that it will be controlled by other regulatory bodies. The Calgary Zoo works with animals of endangered species, and their objective is to preserve. It has been stated more than once that there is 521 endangered species in Canada. This facility has potential to have much larger impacts that will be set out in the previous original bylaws. It's not the birds that are of health concern to our livestock operation and other livestock intensive operations. It's the large four-legged species that could ultimately end up there and have biosecurity issues. There is species of wildlife that can pose risk and biosecurity issues to bovine. We operate a herd of valuable, purebred livestock that is our livelihood and are located in a high concentration of agricultural-based land, intensive and confined feeding facilities, and our pasture land borders the above-mentioned property. There's other pasture land that meets the properties as well. I just have a question that, and not pointing fingers, but I have a question that I'd like you guys to ask yourself, and I think Stuart addressed, I think, much along the same issues of the concern that I have. If a new intensive livestock operation wanted to develop in this area in the future, and the land base was available, would the county approve it? I highly doubt it. Please keep in mind how much thought has been put into this facility for the compatibility of this area. On the same issue of compatibility lies Nameka Lake. There are certain times of the year that there is hunting of waterfowl all around the lake. There is also kite sailors that use this lake for recreational uses. The Calgary Zoo has mandates of protecting wildlife and wild places. This land borders these properties. How long is it going to be before no hunting or navigation or sailing signs go up adjacent to this property? We are wondering about the compatibility of this direct control land use bylaw within this area. We are talking about a major planning application. There is subsequent buildings and developments proposed on this area of land. There is proposed multiple buildings, structures on the southwest of 11, 23, 24, west of the 4th, comprised of 134.9 acres of that proposed cell. On the southeast quarter of 11, 23, 24, 04, it is also proposed to demolish the existing house when ready to build new dwellings. This parcel of land is 85.47 acres. How many buildings are going to be built on the northeast section of 2? I had a question. Has there been an area structure plan completed or requested for this particular property? If you go to the area structure plan, all points listed in that area structure plan can and should apply to this piece of property. Along with biosecurity concerns, all of these, a lot of our concerns also may fall into the previous mentioned requirements in area structure plans. In reading some of the external body comments and in internal department circulations, they did address some of our serious concerns. They also used in favor of the application points which should warrant more of a reason for an area structure plan. They failed to look at the impact of the area. Development Services had a few good comments that this is just, Development Services had a few good comments, but this is just the tip of what needs to be looked at. Alberta Health Services had great comments about past experiences with direct control direct control uses having negative impact to public health. We are very worried about this facility. We are worried about the animals coming in. Will they provide us a list of what will be there? We would like the councillors to please put forth a lot of thought on this prior to redesignation. I think that we are getting lost in the warm and fuzzy part of this facility and not looking at the scope, size, and potential of what this facility can become in the area in which it is going. This is the only place we can operate as agriculture with livestock. We can't pick up and move to the city, as I previously mentioned. Mr. Royer stated that these facilities are very much like agriculture and don't vary from regular agricultural facilities other than the animals that they keep. I personally am not aware of many agricultural facilities that build dormitories, classrooms, or other interpretive centers. I don't question that this is going to go ahead because it's big business. In the last meeting, planning indicated that there was an urgency of getting this application through because of land or a land sale. I'm just getting to a point of what I had heard. If so, I ask, why is there precedency given? Because there's a land deal riding on this application. We urge council to please put forth thought into all of this before you redesignate. County planning is trying to put this land into direct control District 10. I am very confused how we can develop bylaws to suit an individual's own needs or basically develop as we go along the way. What does this mean and what will all apply to this application? Do you guys have a copy of the DC 10 bylaw in front of you guys, councillors? No? Okay. Just wondered if any of you do that, if you could take a minute and look at the DC 10 bylaw with me. You have an opportunity to pull it up.
Please continue.
Okay, thank you. If you go under general regulations in that DC 10 bylaw, you go to the all permitted use and discretionary uses and who they are referred to, which is point D. Right now, the way it stands is there is no direct control by council, especially on the dwellings, because it all goes straight to planning. I think that it would be appropriate that all dwellings could go to a discretionary use, which would allow that to come back to council under direct control. Point E under that same regulations says the design and location of operation of a private sewage treatment facility shall adhere to the Alberta Private Sewage Systems Standards of Practice. I have a huge question on this to you guys. How is this a private sewage when this is a proposed commercial facilities with dormitories, classrooms, and interpretive centers? Also in there, there's a definition of interpretive centers. If you take a chance to read it, that definition to me sounds like this is a public facility. I'd also take a look at the graph on look at permitted and discretionary uses for SAL 1. With everything being permitted, more specifically the permitted dwellings, how does council get any control of this? Does this not just go straight to planning if it's not moved over? Under site regulations in that same bylaw that apply to both cells, it talks about density. If you have a moment, or if you haven't already read it, take a moment to understand that this applies to cells 1 and cells 2. There's potential for 8 dwellings on that property. We're talking double. That's including your dormitories, the way that it stands and is written. Thank you for your time for looking at that. In closing, I would also like to have clarification how planning can state in the recommendations that there will be minimal impact to adjacent lands if an area structure plan or further research has not been completed. Have they complied with any checklist of any kind? All the more reasons for an area structure plan. Please clarify the planning statement on how the provincially owned land that is adjacent to this application hold the power to ensure minimal impact with adjacent land or homeowners. What does this imply? These are all a small portion of your concern and questions that need to be addressed. Please make the best decision and in the best interest of all, please put some consideration to the livestock that reside in this area. This is where we live and other large-scale agricultural operations. This is where we operate with a viable agricultural operation. I want to thank Council very much for your time and your consideration and for hearing me out on this matter. Thank you.
Thank you for coming up. Gary, do you have any few answers for some of them questions?
I'll do my best, yes. So just as a summary for Council's benefit, and as Mr. Royers indicated, this is a reconvened public hearing, so this is our second public hearing. In addition to the first public hearing where we did a half a mile radius circulation, for the purposes of the open house, the council suggested the applicant do. Again, we assisted with the applicant in doing a circulation of 1.5 miles, 3 times the normal circulation period, and that was at their request. We had indicated, or I had indicated as file manager, that if they met the requirements that we normally would meet for circulating for land use, that would be more than sufficient for the open house. They strictly asked and suggested that we, well, not suggested, they asked that we go to 3 times the normal circulation. As they've also indicated, they've did a pretty mass news publication where they went to all the major newspapers as well as the local newspapers as well, as had hired people to do hand delivers. On the component where we assisted with the 1.5 times or 1.5 mile circulation, they went out to just over 160 landowners. So that 160 landowners were notified. Of the 80 in attendance, again, I attended the open house. I had an opportunity to speak to a number of their staff that were present. I think that there were 5 to 6 staff in attendance from the Calgary Zoo, varying capacities, a number of veterinarians. And I talked to landowners as well, the ones who were interested in talking, or I could pull aside and ask some questions of. With that noted, we did have one letter of objection that came in on the first public hearing, and I think it's fair to say we have another. We didn't receive the letter from yourself, but you read it into the record. So the same individual who had indicated an objection at the first public hearing, again, has voiced her concerns at the second public hearing. So just as a reference point, 160 plus landowners have been notified. Some of the people who were in attendance actually weren't even in the area. We heard of one landowner who was about 6 miles away that read it in the newspaper, and they were just curious. So they reached far and wide on this, and at the end of the day, while we don't have any letters of support, we only have one letter of objection, or one landowner with objection, and she is in the immediate area. With regards to the requirement for an area structure plan, at no point in time did I, as a file manager, give consideration to an area structure plan. Area structure plans deal with things on a lot larger scale, a lot larger basis, and in cases like this where it's site-specific or it's unique to essentially one parcel, while it's 6 titled parcels, we're dealing with one entity, one use, one activity, I should say. And a direct control district is perfect for that. It would be a pretty onerous requirement, I would suggest, to put it on the applicant to do an area structure plan to achieve whatever the goal may be for the need for an area structure plan. We dealt with the direct control district as best we can with compatibility with uses for activity. We worked hand in hand with the applicant with regards to what their site plan was going to look like, and that evolved over time as we went back and forth numerous times to work on what the cell 1 and cell 2 look like. So it was a collaborative effort between the county planning department as well as the applicant. With regards to compatibility as it relates to what happens in the immediate area, yes, we have Nemeka Lake to the east of us. We also have approximately 30-meter buffer owned by the Alberta provincial government between us, being the applicant, and the lake. So that provides an additional buffer as well. Ducks Unlimited does operate in and around that area. I had a brief conversation with Mr. Royer during the open house about his discussions he's had with Ducks Unlimited, because as he mentioned, there's some hunting activity that happens. My understanding is it's probably a bit questionable when it happens and how it happens, and Ducks Unlimited is concerned with it as well. I don't think the intent, and I can't speak for the Calgary Zoo, but I don't think the intent for the Calgary Zoo is to shut down everything in and around the community. I don't think that's what's occurred. If anything, it's actually worked to the contrary in Foothills, which is where they currently have their site of approximately the same acreage, 300 acres, where they're actually getting surrounded more and more by development. So it's actually encroaching on them. So instead of them fighting it back. It would appear that they're looking for another option to move to another location that maybe would grant them 34 years, just like they have right now at the Foothill site. With regards to the number of species that can come and go, we are not controlling it. We can't control it under the direct control. We're not recommending we try to control the species count or the type of species. There's regulations that the Calgary Zoo has to follow and apply and abide by, and we'll leave it with that. We're comfortable with that from planning's perspective. Mr. Royer has indicated that the 34 odd years they've been on site at the Foothills location, they've had approximately 6 to 7 species on site the whole entire time. And the Przewalski horses, if I recall it correctly, have been on site almost all 34 years. Okay, give or take by the looks of it, not exactly 34. So if that's any indication, again, we can't guarantee that the owner of the land comes in and flips all the species around. That's what they're proposing, and they could, and we have no mechanism to control it. We just trust that the system's there with regards to the Zoo Act and all the other regulations they have to abide by, that the land can hold so much that they don't maximize it. With regards to intensity of buildings, we're dealing with a 333-acre site. This is a large site. Right now, the 6 parcels, as was stated, and that's correct. Under the development permits, they're going to need to consolidate a number of these parcels to get permits. The reason being is a number of these parcels have no legitimate road access. So until they have ownership of the lands, they can't consolidate the lands. And they're fully aware of that. We've had discussions on it. So if for some reason they decided not to consolidate, they'd pretty much be limited to about 2 to 3 parcels they could get development permits on. The rest of the parcels, they wouldn't be able to because they have no adequate access. Once they consolidate all the parcels into one, then it's all treated as such and there's no access issue. Again, going back to intensity of buildings, it was deliberate on behalf of the Calgary Zoo, and I would say probably the planning staff maybe had some influence on it with regards to ensuring that the majority of the buildings where the activity is centrally located and within proximity to each other, with the exception of the outbuildings, the barns, what have you, the containment areas that are needed for the various species throughout the site. And the idea between that, with that is to, again, get it located as close to the entranceway, if you want to call it that, which is that you see in the green area referred to as cell 1, is to get it as close to the main entrance as possible, keep it central to the site as possible, in the sense that because we have provincial lands to the north, and Nameka again to the east, and Siksika to the south, and we have the odd landowner to the northwest, this seemed like a logical place to put the majority of the buildings. They're pretty secluded in that respect. And then it also frees up the rest of the lands to work as they deem fit or necessary with regards to the different species they're dealing with. With regards to urgency, the applicant was asked by council, or suggested by council, to do an open house. They do have an agreement that has a set timeline on it, and they very well could have extended it. Who knows? I can't speak to that. So it was in their interest to hurry up and move forward with an open house. We had pretty tight timelines, so to go from an April 18th to a May 16th, it was my opinion that it was undoable. Now, the applicant had a different opinion, and basically got the wheels in motion with regards to how to make sure they could have their open house and get us results back on the open house and back to us in a time that we could properly make any amendments we needed to the DC and then properly notify for a public hearing or reconvene public hearing. This was probably the quickest we've ever turned around something like this. But if it wasn't for the assistance of the applicant putting their notice together, their open house notice together, and also working on how they were going to communicate with the landowners, it probably wouldn't have been possible to make this mark, but they did, and we provided some assistance. Again, the open house was not a staff-driven exercise. It was an applicant-driven exercise. We did assist with getting circulation out to the immediate area. They went above and beyond that. We made sure that that information was back into us. In the case of the summary, we had it in a verbal form as well. I was in attendance 1 day prior to having this go to a public hearing, or being advertised, sorry, for a public hearing, which has a number of weeks in advance of today's date. If we're in a situation where the drug control district needed to have some significant changes as a result, we would have pushed it and pulled it off. But at that point in time, after the open house was done, and hearing the feedback from Mr. Royer as well as some of their veterinarian staff, and talking to the area residents, from my perspective, there was no needed or necessary amendments. Again, most of the people were there, were curious about it more than anything, and there was no major concerns or what have you raised. Mrs. Massey's raised some concerns, which again, we didn't hear at the open house, although she was present. And the majority of the concerns we hear today, we didn't hear at the open house the first time. or the public hearing the first time. With regards to components of the direct control district, if I can touch on those. One of the questions was under the general regulations, all development uses shall be referred to the development officer for a decision if it's a discretionary use. And if it's permitted, if it's permitted, and if it's a discretionary use, refer to council for a decision. That's how we deal with our direct control districts. If it's under the discretionary column, it comes back to council for a decision. If it's permitted, it goes to the development officers. Staff had paid deliberate attention between both cells 1 and cell 2 on what was permitted and what was discretionary. If council has a different opinion with regards to what should be permitted and discretionary, I leave that to you, as ultimately you're the final deciding body. With regards to E, the design, location, operation of a private sewage treatment facility shall adhere to the Alberta Private Sewage System Standard of Practice. This is a land use bylaw application. It's not a subdivision application. It's not a development permit at this time. When we get to the point, and there will be no subdivision application, so this rests on a development permit application, or many, I'm assuming, over time will come in. The first one that comes in, if they're requiring or requesting any buildings that require sewage treatment and water, they will be required to meet all the provincial requirements and standards, whatever that may look like. We don't have an idea what that looks like, and that may very well restrict what they can do on the site for buildings. But that is something we will deal with at the development permit stage. The interpretive facility, I think the question was, it appears to be a public facility. It is. That's the way that was drafted. It was my understanding in working with Mr. Royer on the different types of uses, what was appropriate or not, is that they had consideration for an interpretive center open to the public. There's a reason why it's discretionary. First off, it could be a fairly large building if it is a building at all. And it's also, from what Mr. Royer is saying is, and I believe he's alluded to it, I don't believe today, but he's alluded to it in the last public hearing, is their intent is not to open this up to the public. They want to do public outreach, yes. They've talked to Siksika Nation with regards to educational components with the students that exist in Siksika Nation, and they have their arrangements with the Strathmore Veterinary Clinic. I've talked to 1 or 2 landowners who would love to volunteer their time. But again, this is a controlled environment. That driveway / road, if you want to have, however you want to call it, provides them quite a bit of anonymity and control. And that's what they speak to. At the open house, they spoke to the fact that their area is very heavily, has a fair amount of security, so they can regulate and control and keep an eye on the species and ensure that there is no that issues that may arise, so they keep an eye on it, as well as having staff on site at any given time. So from the interpretive center, yes, it's a public facility. No, they're not looking at doing it anytime in the future. Mr. Royer can speak to that if council has any more concerns about it. And the idea of putting it in discretionary was because it was the only component that was public and sort of out of the norm of what they're proposing, that maybe council might have wanted to have a little bit of input in that should it ever come forward. So hence why it's in the discretionary column. All the other uses with regards to dwellings and the various other types of dwellings are standard, what we typically have in permitted uses. So quite comfortable that my staff can address any concerns with regards to the development permits when they come in for those types of uses. Regarding the density concern with regards to cell 1 and cell 2, I do want to clarify, just for everybody's benefit, is the density component where it actually regulates the number of dwellings or the number of units in a dormitory exists only within cell 1. It doesn't exist in cell 2. So that green area on the map is the only area that controls density. There is no reference to residential in the blue zone. If you remember from the first public hearing, there's an existing residence there. However, the idea is that it's ultimately going to be phased out and removed along with a number of the outbuildings so that they could be more centrally located in the green zone. So that's why you'll see dwellings is not in the cell 2. They get it right now, basically grandfathered in if this gets approved, but they cannot make any additions to it. Should it burn down, they cannot rebuild it because it's not permitted under the DC. And unless that's changed, the applicant's quite comfortable with that because we've been going back and forth on clarifying that matter. I think that answers, hopefully answers most of the questions or concerns. If council has any others, I can help out.
Council? Yeah? Okay.
Alrighty, couple things. At the development permit stage, you decided that they'll be asked to do what other studies and everything that may be required at the development permit stage. So like hydrologies, aquifers, those kind of things, historical, all that will be asked at development permit stage is what I gather from you.
Through the chair, any supporting studies that are deemed necessary will be required at that in support of an application for development permit. Typically, what we're going to expect to see is going to be groundwater assessment if they're going to be punching wells in or supplying potable water. With regards to septic, is the proper private septic disposal system report studies that'll support whatever they're proposing, whether it's communal, whether it's individual, and then ensuring it meets all the proper separations.
No, that's good. That's as
I was
long
going to say,
as-
those are the two that come to mind. Until we have detailed plans in play and what's going on, this is schematic, it's the best we have, and I'm imagining it's pretty close to what we'll ultimately see. But it's going to come down to water, wastewater, and go from there. I don't think we're going to have much concern with access. This is a private facility. It'll probably have pretty limited ongoing access in and out of here.
Okay, so and I guess I hear what some of the people are saying out there with regards to that. So the development permit stage is where we can do the requesting. The other thing that I do hear here is the fact that, and because of one of the previous issues, and it happens to be the same lady that was standing up there speaking about her concerns, but I remember she had to do an ASP to get a 1 3-acre parcel subdivided for one house. And I remember her back then being in here doing the same thing. So for me, it's not about love the project. It's great. I have a good deal, but we still have to make sure that we're doing our due diligence, sitting here, making sure that they've done their work for it as well. And I guess I agree a bit with the cell number 1 under the DC9 bylaw that's in the book, or in the package. And they essentially can come in and you don't have a definition of a unit, but under density, a maximum number of, I don't know if you can pull it up on the screen, a maximum number of dwellings shall be 3, excluding dwelling dormitory. And so essentially, we're putting in 4, 5, 6, if you look there under density, I don't know if they can bring it up. There's allowable of up to 3 dwellings, excluding the dormitory, and then a maximum number of units. So what is units defined as? And so we're looking at 6, and I guess my theory is permitted use means that they're going to come in and just get permits for them and build up to 6 things there. So I would like to see the modular homes and the under permitted use dwelling, manufactured, modular, semi-detached, moved into discretionary use. Because essentially you're building a facility there, and it's under cell number 1, it says institutional. So I think that when that comes in, if we moved it over to discretionary, the people in the area would have the option and they would know what is happening when it's happening. And I don't think the applicant would even have a problem doing that. If you're going to be a good neighbor, then we can come, and so that I guess it's a little bit more, because it's looking like the density is maximum 3 and then maximum 3 other units and then only 1 dormitory and a dwelling. And under the site regulations or permitted and discretionary use, you have a private animal care facility in both cell number 1 and cell number 2. So you actually have 2 private care facilities on top of those 6 units, plus the dormitory. So that's why I'm saying I can see the point of it's okay that they come in and do it, but maybe it should be coming to us to say, yes, it's okay, or we're doing the good neighbor policy by bringing it back to council. So I would do an amendment to move those over.
Okay, so through the chair. Again, you threw a lot at me. I'll see if I can catch up. With regards to the density, just for clarity, when we're talking about units, as the wording is here, is yes, within cell 1 and cell 1 only, you can have a maximum of 3 dwelling types that aren't dormitory. In addition, you can have a dormitory. Now, the 3 dwelling types, sort of as suggested here, could, in any form, we don't restrict the form, other than the dormitory component, could be a single dwelling, a manufactured, a modular, semi-detached, as long as it doesn't exceed 3. If you do it semi-detached, that's 2 right there, under our definitions of our land use bylaw. Now, with regards to the dormitory, it's one structure, one building, and within that, you can have up to 10 units within it. So you're dealing with 3, sort of, if you want to call it stick-built / manufactured dwellings, and then 1 dormitory. That's the maximum on the residential side of things. And again, the number count with regards to population or occupancy, we don't regulate occupancy. You can have 1 dwelling unit on a property. It can be 10,000 square feet with 8 bedrooms, or you can have 1,000 square feet in 1 bedroom. We don't get into it that much. So there's a bit of discretion on that with regards to an applicant and what they're trying to achieve here. With regards to if the suggestion is to move some of the permitted uses over to discretionary, again, staff had drafted this as it is because typically when you're dealing with direct controls or most other districts, we typically have dwellings in the permitted category and let the development officers deal with it. If council so chooses to move some of these dwellings or all of these dwellings over to discretionary, that's council's call today.
And I guess that's looking at the fact of you're moving in homes and we just had a previous one and we can only allow so many homes on so many acres. And this year we're allowing 3 and then another facility and another facility, another facility. So for me, it's just come in and get permission and that's it. So for me, let's move it over to discretionary because you're allowing them 2 private animal facilities, 1 in the cell 1, cell 2, plus you're doing accessory buildings and structures. So that can be a house for a bird or a barn or whatever. But then you're allowing 3 homes and like, as I can understand why Ms. Massey said what she said, because in the end, you're allowing, that's a big development. And it's right next door to her. So for me, I would just move it, and I'm not saying they're doing it next week, and you may never build another house down there. You may just go with a private animal facility, a dormitory, and that's it. And maybe a gift shop and something else in there. But for me, it's if you're going to start building 3 or 4 homes, then I think you need to come back in and have that conversation here. Because we don't allow it in other areas like Ag General, you have to have so many acres before you can have a, so that's just a thought, and that would be my amendment, I guess.
Through the chair, if I could just add one more thing for clarity, and I did miss this point when you brought it up initially. The private animal care facility is permitted use in both. The rationale behind that is because it's kind of an all-encompassing use. There will be components within cell 1 that'll have the odd structure or what have you where, as we've alluded to in the first open house, is if there needs to be veterinarian care, they don't have anything on site, but they will need to have some building or structure in which to provide that kind of care where the veterinarians can come in, address the animals, however. And some of those buildings or some of those sort of generic activities that might happen in either cell need to happen in both cells. So that's why that private animal care facility floats between both, because in cell 1, we didn't go, cell 1 was strictly residential and that was it. We left it open a bit because it was a combination of residential and the overall use, which is for the protection of the endangered species. And with that may come some unique buildings that may come for that. Maybe vet care needs to be in a certain part, and maybe storage of feed or something that may need to be there. So we didn't want to exclude that from cell 1 if they had it happen. Again, that's the difficulty with any direct control district or any activity is we try to catch as much as we can based on the information we have. And if something misses the boat or changes, we can always bring the DC back and amend it, or work with the applicant as best as we can. So if that provides any clarity with regards to private animal care facility, it isn't suggesting that we're going to have all the endangered species. Everything that sits on the larger parcel is then all of a sudden going to merge into cell 1 one day or something like that. It's just to accommodate some of the structures or buildings and the fact that some of those animals may at some point in time need to come into cell 1 to be addressed or dealt with, and then off they go again, if you want to call it that, into cell 2. So.
Thank you. Any other question, Alice?
I'm just going to put out a question to you, what I could see could happen. So we have all of this as discretionary. What would stop a farmer going under this to get any one of these put on a farm? Because we have different, land uses. Why could they not come in here and build a dormitory and go under this? What makes this DC 10 stop other land use going under this.
Okay, so through the
So are
chair,
we opening a Pandora's box is what I'm trying to ask you.
so through the chair, DC 10 is what I refer to as a site-specific amendment, site-specific bylaw. So it's just that, it's site-specific. So this direct control district is just specific to that area outlined in the direct control district. And this specific area is controlled by one owner, soon to be perhaps another owner, which is the Calgary Zoo. So nobody else can take advantage of this unless they plan on buying the land or partnering up or something to that effect. If the suggestion is, do you want to take DC 10 and apply it somewhere else?
Yes.
Somebody can apply for that tomorrow if they like, yes. And it would be, again, site-specific to whatever piece of land they're applying for. Does the staff support it? Does council support it? I leave that with you. And it's a pretty big hypothetical for me to have anything else to comment on it. Anybody can apply for anything, and that's what they did in this case.
Yeah.
There's no district that accommodates this. This is extremely unique, as I think we'll all appreciate. So that's what direct control districts do. They work best to try to accommodate unique districts. We did it for Lakes of Muirfield. We've done it for the Twin Creeks Hutterite Colony, and we've done it for other kind of quasi-industrial commercial sites for direct control district. With the new land use bylaw, I imagine you'll be seeing a few more direct control districts coming forward to council to accommodate those unique uses that exist in the county that have kind of been forgotten or ignored, and we're now addressing them. And we'll have applicants in the future, as I fully expect we will, asking for something that our bylaw doesn't address. And how do we accommodate it if council wants to accommodate it and staff can support it? And this is one of those instances that is perfect for a direct control district, because it's specific to the site in question, and you can put in conditions, requirements, uses that are catered just to this application. So it doesn't make it appealing to a lot of other users of the land. So let's say if the Calgary Zoo in 5 years changes their mind and wants to walk, this direct control district sits on this piece. It's very unique to this. So that if somebody wants to come in and do what the Calgary Zoo did, then great, they have this in play. If they don't, then they're gonna have to come back and rezone it or do a different direct control at the time, whenever that may be, should it happen. But
So what you're saying, it's site-specific.
Site-specific, at the beginning of the bylaw and the Schedule A, it indicates exactly where the pieces in question are. There's 6 parcels in total right now, and ultimately it will become 1 parcel. And that Schedule A helps outline the boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
And Rex?
Okay, so for me, Mr. Chairman, the dwellings and where they are and whether they're permitted or not permitted, I don't think is the issue right now. It does allow for some community input, but that's probably not where I'm going with this today. I think it's very commendable that the Calgary Zoo held that open house and did it in short fashion and seemed to have a good community support. I guess where I'm going to come from on this is if we can't, my understanding is Mr. Thiessen has gotten maybe a current list of the species that might end up on that property, and currently his veterinarian is saying that there are no issues. But if we can't monitor, control, regulate, understand species that come in the future, then how are we to operate within that confine, right? So for me, it would have to be that we would have that control, which you're telling me we can't. We would have to have a buffer so that I don't want the agriculture community affected as far as operations, and if they're not, great. If somebody wants to put a chicken barn in, what happens if the avian bird flu comes in? And I don't know if you're gonna laugh at me, but so is the farm gonna be blamed for the issues at the zoo property, or is the zoo gonna be blamed for the issues at the bird property? So I do have some issues with that. I mean, there were some comments about, animals being carriers from one property to another, so they could be 50 miles away and those same animals could still bring them into our community. So that's a tough argument. But I think overall, if we can't control, understand, and regulate these species, that's, I think, our only control here. And so for me, if I can't have that control, then I know what my answer is.
Mr. Chairman, probably best to have Mr. Royer answer those set of questions, if I may.
Yeah, so just to speak to the biosecurity concerns, I mentioned briefly that we take biosecurity very seriously, and it's a huge part of regulations that we work under with the province, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, as well as the federal government for programs that we participate in. Our programs don't work if we have disease. If there's any disease of any kind that appears within our collection, specifically within our release animals, immediately those animals cannot be released. All of our programs have very, very significant health monitoring components to them. Just an example, our cranes, whipping cranes every single year are processed twice a year. Every fall, every animal goes under a full health exam, including blood draws for disease monitoring. When we send cranes out for release, they also go through another round of testing to ensure that they have no signs of disease, as well as no appreciable disease of any known diseases that we would be concerned about in the wild. This is critical for us, obviously, but it's also very important for the government organizations that we work with that are helping to re-establish these populations in the wild. The last thing we want to do is send animals out to the wild that have diseases that are going to spread to their wild counterparts. So with that said, we are very, very cautious with our animals, both at the zoo as well as at our Wildlife Conservation Center. We, even within our own collection of animals, we keep buffers between animals. So, for example, we built a new sage grouse facility out at our current Wildlife Conservation Center, and we did not consider putting it near our whooping cranes because we didn't want to have the two bird species close to each other. Not because we have any immediate concerns about disease with either species, but we're always trying to make sure that if there is ever any chance of anything occurring, that we can immediately isolate any problems and avoid any concern with spread. As well, we have concerns always at our zoo with biosecurity. Our staff leave their uniforms and their boots at work. We don't allow people to wear clothes that they've worn with their pets, or if they work in agriculture or live on a farm, to come to the zoo, and vice versa. We don't let things leave the zoo. We have the exact same thing at our Wildlife Conservation Center. When we border agricultural land, we always have a buffer between our animals and agricultural animals, as well as wildlife. We do our best to keep wildlife away from our animals to ensure that, and for us, our main concern is introducing disease to our animals, but obviously it goes both ways if we have that buffer, and we ensure that that's always in place. Any new species, any new individual animals we bring in undergo full testing before they even come to the zoo. If there's no way to do that, so for example, if we rescued an animal, they would go into a strict quarantine situation and they would go through testing. Even if we do tests immediately, we still observe a time frame of quarantine to ensure that no diseases that may be present are going to express themselves. And if we have any concerns, those animals remain in quarantine. It's generally not a problem for us. As I mentioned, most of our animals are pre-tested before they come in. This would be the same to any new program we did. So if we decided under the guidance or under the direction of the provincial government or the federal government or some other authority to participate in another program, and we brought a new species in, it would be exactly the same. So whether those animals come from another captive facility or they come from the wild, whichever the case may be, none of those animals would come to our facility without having pre-testing done or us being comfortable enough that that wouldn't be an issue. And when they come to our facility, they would always live in a space that has a significant buffer around them to avoid any transfer of disease between those species and other species, whether they're at the zoo or they're wildlife or other species that are neighbors. Same applies for things like, there obviously is always some risk. There's wild birds still and things like that we're always concerned about. We keep a close eye on these things. Our sage grouse, for example, we would worry about wild pheasants and that would be in the area that we have our grouse, and we just put a buffer in to try to keep those spaces separate. And then we undergo regular testing in case something does express itself from the wild or transfers over. So these are some of the precautions we take, and as I mentioned, we cannot have a successful program unless we're following these things. Animals that have disease are not useful for being reintroduced into the wild. We're trying to maintain wild populations that are similar to what they're intended to be in the wild, and we want to make sure that we're not the source of introducing any diseases out there as well.
I wanted to bring up just a couple other things. When we sent out the notice and hand-delivered the notice, we made specific a point of putting my name and my contact information on it so that any issues that may arise after the meeting could be brought to our attention so that we could focus on them and respond to them in a thoughtful process. Fear is a wonderful thing. It can cause us to do nothing and often is designed specifically to cause us to do nothing. One of the people that we deal with fear with regularly is our provincial government and other provincial governments. The suggestion that we can bounce around with animals doesn't exist in reality. We have to get permission from the provincial government that controls each species to work with the species. We're not allowed to just go and say, hey, we want to save sage grouse, we're going to go save them. We don't get to do that. We have to go through the provincial government. We have to get permits from the provincial government. We have to get allotment of animals. We have to go through them with the exact process that we get those animals, and we have to report to them regularly what we're doing with those animals. Right now, the land is owned by a numbered company. A numbered company that has neither no reputation nor concern about maintaining that reputation. They can put anything they want within the agricultural requirements on that land. They can have sheep and goats. Sheep and goats are huge problems to livestock. I mean, the disease that was talked about at the last meeting was specifically came from a sheep. And there's nothing in your regulations that allow you to stop somebody from filling that property up with sheep or goats. And I just don't believe that 5301, whatever it is going to have the concern about showing up in the Calgary Herald as having created any sort of environmental issue to the county of Wheatland or its neighbors. We are quite proud of the fact that we could bring 80 people together in your county very, very quickly. That's one side of the two-sided sword. The other side of that two-sided sword is that if we make a mistake, if we do something wrong, if we cause someone some harm, we show up in that paper just as fast. And social media goes crazy, and it is not kind. I mean, we've actually had staff, I'm sure you all remember Cecil the lion. We had nothing to do with Cecil the lion other than a hunting organization had a room booked at our facility. Our staff got death threats over social media because of that animal. We cannot afford to cost Wheatland County or our neighbors problems. We can't bring animals in at our discretion. We can't flip-flop back and forth about what type of animals we have in that facility. It is a difficult process, and it is a long process. And one of the things that we spend an awful lot of time on is talking to the provincial governments about the work that we're doing with what they perceive as their animals. We focus on Western Canadian animals because nobody else does. Because if we don't address the concerns of sage grouse, Vancouver Island marmots, the whooping crane, nobody else in Western Canada is going to. I would love to have had that letter a week ago so that I could respond to it item by item. Unfortunately, I didn't. We brought a team of our two top animal care management team and two of our top vets with 51 years experience between the two of them to answer every single question that was asked at that community meeting. And quite frankly, we think that having the Calgary Zoo as part of the Wheatland County would be a boon for Wheatland County, and we think we would show that we are a community member that cares about how we treat the community.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Any member of the public have any more comments, questions, concerns? Staff? Not seeing any questions or concerns, I will close the public hearing for bylaw 2016-63. And we're now back in council. As I was not here for the last public hearing, I'm going to have to abstain, I think, from voting on this, if there's any motions made. Okay, we're in council. Brenda, you wanted to amend the bylaw. Do you still want to?
Yes, I'd like to switch the permitted use, change the permitted uses of, let me find it here, sorry. I moved it off of it. Permitted uses, I would like the dwellings moved over to discretionary uses.
Okay.
I have least worries about, I think we've gone around the bend about biosecurity for, through this whole process, but I do have a concern with building a large number of density homes on even that land. Nobody else can do it without permission to do it, so I think, and
Okay.
that's my
And there's
theory.
only 4 councillors left. Does any councillor have any difficulty with that amendment?
Yeah, the first dwelling, yeah.
Second.
I think the densities should still remain the same. Even if they do, they still have to come back in for permission to do it, right? But there's a lot of units there that can be put on without, and I think we should have some say in how many as they go. Yeah, it should come discretionary. That also gives a chance for the neighbors to be able to do that. I don't think it's and they just have to come for a development permit and come in front of council to get houses built down there. And I'm sure their intention is not to build a city down there, but
Does anybody have any problem with that amendment?
they can still have accessory buildings, private care facility, all that.
Gary?
Can I just get some clarification? So, through you, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Knight, you're asking that all dwelling categories under cell 1 permitted be moved over to discretionary. Is that how I understand it?
And actually, you could leave the dormitory. I don't even have a problem with the dormitory, the private animal care facility. But once you start putting 3 or more homes down in there, then manufactured, modular, semi-detached, single-detached, with a maximum of 3 units and then another 3 units. The dormitory, you allow 1 dormitory. You're allowing a private animal care facility. That's guaranteed. They can come in, get the permits, go ahead and move forward on that. But once you start putting homes down in there, then I think that they need to, that's 6 homes or 6 other units. That's 3 homes and 6 units. So I think that should come back to us.
If I may, just for clarity again, the dormitory actually can have up to 10 units, so it's probably the most intensive of the residential dwelling components. If I was to suggest one go to discretionary, that would be it. But if the idea is to keep that in permitted, just so I'm clear, and then the rest move over to discretionary, I thought I may have heard you suggest that manufactured dwellings be removed completely. Is that? Okay, thank you, because there is a need.
Everything about the dwellings, with the exception of the dormitory, because you're allowing, if you move your page up just a bit, you can see the density down there.
Yes.
And your dormitory says that it's a maximum number of 10 in a dormitory. So you have
But
10
the
people.
houses are still a maximum of 3 as well, right?
Right, and then, so then you have 10 people living down there, plus you're going to put in more homes, 6, up to 6, and then another 6 units. So I'm just suggesting that they get moved over.
So just for clarity, I'm not sure the math's working out. You're saying 6 units
Yeah.
over and above the dormitory?
Well, if you go up, it says the maximum number of units shall be 3 excluding dwelling dormitory.
Correct, so
But
that
it
would be
says
3
right above
dwelling
it,
units.
the maximum number of dwellings. So I asked what units were. You have units and you have dwellings in there, so that's 6.
Okay, so if, try to explain this again, and if I have the wording wrong and council's of the opinion should be changed, by all means, provide guidance. The way the bylaw was drafted was no more than 3 dwelling types, excluding dormitory.
Right.
So at no point in time can they exceed, if they wanted to, 3 single detached, or a single detached modular and manufactured, totaling 3, or semi-detached, which is 2, and a single detached, which is 1. So at no point in time will they have more than 3 dwelling units on the property at any given time, in addition to the dormitory. So you just, when you say 6, you kind of catch me off guard because
Yeah, go down
it's
to your
not 6.
second line then. It says the maximum number under A, under density, A and B. You're looking at a maximum number of dwellings shall be 3 excluding dwelling dormitory. And then you have a maximum number of units shall be 3.
What that does is that helps in the case of the semi-detached. So in the case of the semi-detached, we typically call them semi-detached dwellings, but in essence, that's 2 units if you want to do the math, or as I do the math. So that's helping clarify that you can't have 6 semi-detached units because it's 3 dwelling types, because it would exceed the 3 unit count. It would be 6. So that's why that B's in there. If the semi-detached category wasn't in there, that I would remove that line item completely because it's very clear the rest of the way. So while I apologize if it isn't clear, item B under density is helping us sort of differentiate between the semi-detached component, which can in essence be a semi-detached dwelling, but also 2 units go with that. So we don't want to have that either. We want to have it as 3 dwelling units in the form of 3 buildings in addition to the 10-unit dormitory. So
Is that clear, or is you still want to?
maybe not, but I
Well,
thought it was.
for me, it won't matter because when you move it over to discretionary, they have to come back and do it anyways.
Well, and we'll still be providing that explanation,
Exactly.
whether it's to our development officers or to council.
It's not cutting them out from doing anything that you want to do.
The applicant have any comments to that?
Yeah, what we want to build, and we're happy to, with you rewording it any way you like, is, all we ask is the same thing that anybody would. We would like to have a building that we house our main house, like anybody else gets a main house, and then a unit that we can house workers. So if you want to say, okay, you can only have a house and 2 spots for your workers, that's great with us. We have no problem with that. We don't want any more than that. We'll never want any more than that. But, you know, we're a charity. So the first thing we may put in there is a mobile home. And so, like the previous applicant. So all we care about is that you say, yes, you can have 3. That's it. And if you want to put dormitory into discretionary so that we have to come back when and if we ever want to build a dormitory, because we may never want to. I mean, we can house people here in Strathmore. So if you wanted to take that one and move it over, and so you're saying 3 units, that's it. 3 units, they can be a mobile home, they can be a duplex, which counts as 2 units. Anything like that, we're fine with that. But I just want to emphasize, in our opinion, that document only allows us 3 units in the whole property. Okay? So if there's a wording issue, we're happy to modify the wording, but we are very clear about what we expect, and it's now on the record. We only expect 3 units.
Okay. We're still having trouble with the wording?
I just believe that if they're going to do it, it's direct control, so when they're going to do it, they can come in and ask.
So I'll
like-
say, for clarity's sake, if you're having trouble with the wording, if you just moved it over to discretionary
Then they come
instead
in.
of permitted, and then you'll be dead
That'd
clear
be fine.
when it comes to it.
Just move it to discretionary and then it just moving the houses to discretionary.
But then you're telling us we can't even have a place to keep our workers?
Nope.
No.
It just
No.
means it comes
No.
back to
No.
council for decision as opposed to
You
development
just have to come to
officers.
council for a
Still
decision.
Yeah, but we're buying a $2.5 million dollar piece of property. We have to write that check. And when we write that check, if you tell us that we can't have a trailer to house our people, we can't operate. We can't leave those animals alone. So you're saying to us, we won't even allow you what we allow agricultural people without you coming back to us, at which point you may say no to us. And now we've got a $2.5 million piece of property that we can't operate on. So we're not asking, like I say, we're not asking for more. We're just saying we need to house people on the property. The same as any farm does, the same as any agricultural operation. We don't want more than any agricultural operation. We're simply saying you allow people to have
Yeah, you do.
2 dwellings. We just ask for 3. If you want to cut us back to 2, we could live with it. But we can't put out $2.5 million on the speculation that you might give us permission to build a
Is there
place
not
for
a
our
home there
workers.
now?
Pardon me?
Is there not an actual home on the?
Yeah,
facility?
but we can't build that second home until we tear that one down. That's the way your agreement is we can only have 3 no matter what. So if we want to build a new home, we got to tear down the old home. That's the
Turning them
requirement.
into an office. They're allowed an office, they're
Yeah,
allowed
but
everything.
we need to be able to have a place for people to work. It's a 20, like any other agricultural facility, it's a 24-hour-a-day operation, and people need to be there.
So you need one home is what you're asking for?
No, we're saying like any place, we need a place for our family to live, and a place for the workers to live. So we need a minimum of 2, and our preference is what we've asked for is 3. Only 3 homes, only 3 locations where people can live on the entire property. I'm afraid I'm struggling with why having 3 residents is a massive problem. Because you offer multiple residents to farms.
Okay.
Well, not necessarily.
Every parcel of land, I believe, gets 1 resident. Over 80 acres, you get 2. And we've have a habit of always, an agricultural operation come in and wants another resident for workers, we've granted that. To me, this is the same type of thing.
Same kind of process.
So right now, they got 4 parcels of land here. That's a minimum of 4 houses. They got 6. They could build 6 houses without doing any boundary adjustments.
I know that.
So we're just asking for 1 after 3. Because it's going to all be 1 piece of property.
Is there any way?
Yeah. 3 units, period.
That's what you're asking for?
Yeah.
We'd be absolutely fine with that. Be very
Yeah.
specific, 3, that's it.
It's 3 buildings.
And if we ever want to build a dorm, we come back, put it in discretionary, we'll come back and ask and
Okay.
That's fine. That would be.
Okay.
See, what I'm trying to get at is the fact that you have a lot of facilities there that you're allowed to come in and build. And that being said, when you do it, it's fine, but you're impacting, our job is to look at the actual land use, right? Yeah. And that impact on that land use. So 3 homes, and then you're building a dormitory, an institution, and the gift shop and all those. I know, but it says it in your bylaw. It says it right in the bylaw.
if there says gift shop in there, take it out. We
No,
will
but
never
it's-
build a gift shop there.
It says under direct control, it explains possible under purpose and intent, and you go to the definitions, and it says definitions in there.
Yeah, if it says gift shop, you're welcome
So
to
what
take
I'm
it
saying
out.
is the intent of the bylaw is there.
Yeah, in the
right.
interpretive center, the gift shop's in the
Interpretive center,
which
right.
is a discretionary use.
I know.
Yeah.
So, but what I'm saying is the impact on that land. And that's why if all of a sudden you're going to build 3 and then come back in, and right now it is not in all titles. And Glenn is right. You can at this time come back and say, well, this title's different, so now I want to build whatever it is,
Which
right?
is what we're doing right now.
And so that is a concern, and I think Glenn.
That concern won't be there if it's all in a direct control district.
Yeah.
It'd be just all lumped into one.
So,
right?
and that is, and it's an impact, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're happy to, the issues that you brought up, and we're happy to accommodate your concern,
Okay.
which is only 3 units,
And then switch the dormitory over.
move the dormitory over. The issue of animal care, we will only have 1 animal care clinic. We can't afford more than that. What we did to accommodate the Wheatland County is we said, like if a crane is sick, we have a little, the crane building's about 12 by 20. So it's a 12 by 20 building that the cranes use for wintering. Our vet may go to that building and care for that animal. So in an effort to be totally transparent, we said, yes, there may be other areas of it, but an agricultural community, they'll go
Yeah.
deal with the cow wherever that cow is.
Exactly, and I get that. And if you go to the larger picture, it's the site plan, Gary? The actual picture, and I guess page, it's the one that shows the breakdown of, I'm on the wrong one.
Right there.
Yeah, that one. And if you enlarge it there, you'll see that there's actually 4 buildings on, and that's what I'm looking at. That's a,
Zoom in, you mean?
yeah, zoom in, sorry, enlarge it. Yeah.
4 buildings.
On cell 2, and then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on cell 1.
Yeah, but all those buildings, if you look at this,
Yeah.
those 4 buildings, those aren't buildings. Those are paddocks.
Paddocks, yeah.
The building is the little tiny square in the corner of that.
But you'll probably have accessory buildings, just like everybody else does, with some kind of shelter or type of.
Yeah, and that's what they
so-
are, is they're
And that's what it
shelters
is,
and
but it's an impact, right? So I look at that and I say, it's an impact to the surroundings. So for me, it's a limited number of homes. So that's what it needs to
And
do.
we're perfectly
Fine with
comfortable
that.
with Brady.
Okay. Gary, can you put that in? 3 buildings, accessory
homes.
building, dormitory and discretionary. I think that would answer their questions.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if I may throw this out, see if this provides some satisfaction, I guess, is with regards to, and I've talked to Mr. Roy about this already, move dormitory dwelling over to discretionary, move modular over to discretionary, move single detached over to discretionary. The suggestion is to leave manufacturers permitted. They need some kind of temporary structure to get on there to sort of set up shop, whether it's for a year, 2 years, and that allows them to shut down the other residential building, move everything up to cell 1. Like I said, I think I mentioned it, remove semi-detached. There's confusion with semi-detached. There's other number of options there that they can deal without the semi-detached component. And then on the density side, remove B. So that's providing the confusion with regards to units. So as it would read then, is with manufactured is permitted, every other dwelling moved over to discretionary, so it's still allowable, to a maximum number of dwellings shall be no more than 3, excluding dwelling dormitories. So dwelling dormitory is still the 4th building, if you will. And then it indicates that the maximum number of dormitory dwellings on there is only 1, so it limits it to 1, and then limits it to no more than 10 units in that dormitory. So that hopefully provides clarity. 3 dwellings, 1 dormitory, everything discretionary with the exception of manufactured. Would that work, Mr. Chairman?
Does that work for the applicant?
It works for us.
Okay.
But I'm not sure that, my concern is that what you want? Because that tells us we have to put manufactured homes there. If you just left it as it is, took out semi-detached, then we could build permanent structures, but still only 3. Like, I agree with, the semi-detached, I think just makes the whole thing hard to understand.
Okay.
So if we took out semi-detached, took it out completely, we don't have to build a semi-detached. Take out that reference to 3 units, or to additional units, so it makes it sound like we're allowed more, and just have 3 dwelling, and they can be any one of those 3 type, of the remaining type. That would be best. Again, either will work for us, but I think you don't necessarily want us to automatically do a mobile home.
No, that's not what I'm hearing. I think that it's the density is what I'm hearing.
Perfect, we are.
So 3, whatever you want to build, and discretionary is a dormitory, basically. That's your amendment? Everyone agree with that amendment? There's only 4. Council, we're in council, we're ready for, you made the amendment, you want to do second reading or not?
Oh, yeah, I'll move second reading, sorry.
Okay. Okay, any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Is carried. I wasn't here for the first public hearing. Okay, we're still in council. We want to do third reading? Alice?
I'll move third.
Third
I'll
reading?
move third reading, and we need complete agreement or lose it?
No.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
No.
I'll move third reading.
Third reading. Any questions? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thanks for putting up with us. Thanks for coming in. I would like to do this one too. Bylaw, we'll go to 3.1C on our agenda. Bylaw 2017-02, public hearing. I will open that now. He knew our land use bylaw better than any counselor up here. Oh. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Have proper notifications been done?
With regards to this application, yes, we've met the requirements of the MGA.
Okay, is there any member of the public have any concerns of any councillor listening to this public hearing? Not seeing any, please continue.
Thank you. Before you is land use application LU 21702. It's tied to bylaw 2017-02. The owners are SLD Farming, and the applicant is Don Jensen. With regards to the legal description, it's the northwest of 22, 24, 22, west of the 4th in Division 1. Titled area is exactly 160 acres. Existing land use district is agricultural general district. The proposed land use district is country residential with the remaining staying AG. Purpose of the application is to redesignate a 3.06 acre plus or minus from agricultural general district to CR country residential district to accommodate a future proposed subdivision of 3.06 acres. The balance again is to remain agricultural general district. Subject property is adjacent to Range Road 223 and approximately 2.9 miles southwest of the village of Standard. Again, background information is this is in support of a subdivision application for 3.06 acre parcel to separate the farmstead from the quarter section. With regards to policy analysis, objectives 3.1.1 sub 2 and 3.1.1 sub 3 promote the protection of existing agricultural lands and minimizing fragmentation of and effect on agricultural lands. The existing farmstead is within an area of marginal farmland and as a result separated from cultivated portion of the quarter section. The parcel being redesignated does not remove the productive agricultural land, nor does it fragment any agricultural land. The agricultural land assessment prepared by Ag Services concluded that there is minimal impact on the existing cultivated agricultural land and the proposed redesignation would have no additional environmental impacts. That assessment is attached to your staff report. Objectives 3.6.1 of section 3.6 of the residential development in the MDP was also met, which ensures that residential development does not encroach on agricultural lands. The dwelling in question has been existing since approximately 1930s, and the land cultivated around it has created a boundary around the farmstead. The proposed redesignation follows this boundary and as such does not encroach on the land currently being farmed. With regards to the land use bylaw, the proposed redesignation boundary falls within the CR country residential acreage range, which is 1 to 5 acres, and the setbacks for the side and rear conform to the requirements within the land use bylaw as per the CR district. Just as background information, a variance was granted on August 16th of 2016 last year for the reduced front yard setback from the road right of way. And therefore staff have no concerns regarding the 70-foot front yard setback from the existing house and addition. And as staff may remember, because we just adopted the new land use bylaw, we have gone from 125-foot setback in the front to 75-foot setback in the front. With regards to circulation comments, Alberta Environment and Parks had no concerns. Alberta Health Services provided us with their 4 standard comments. With regards to ATCO Pipelines, no concerns. And Encana Corporation provided a letter stating they have no concerns with the owner using the approach to access this property. You can see it in the air photo where we have the Encana well site, and it kind of skirts through the subject lands, and in particular the proposed subdivision land. TELUS had no concerns, nor did Western Irrigation District. With regards to agricultural services internally on the comments, the application subdivides an existing farmstead site from the parcel in the area of marginal farmland. So no impact to agriculture is expected, and for that reason the application is supported by Ag Services. Development Services indicated the site plan should include distance from oil well and pipelines, and all development within the proposed parcel shall meet setbacks from property lines. This will be addressed at time of subdivision when we address the technical matters and the setbacks. With regards to transportation and infrastructure services, approaches to proposed lot and remnant parcels shall be constructed to county standards. Further to that, our external engineering firm provided comments indicating that a joint access should be proposed between the Encana well site and the roadway and the owner's approach. And again, Encana has indicated a letter that they're in support of a shared setup. Circulation of adjacent landowners. We've circulated to all landowners within half a mile of the subject lands. No letters were received in support or objection to this application. With that, before council is options 1 and 2. Option 1 being that bylaw 2017 be given second reading and that bylaws 2017-02 be given third and final reading. The second option available to council is that application LU 21702 be refused and that bylaw 21702 be rescinded. Staff is recommending approval of option 1 for the following reasons. Number 1, it meets the regulations and requirements of the current land use bylaw for country residential district. And number 2, it does not remove or fragment productive agricultural land. And finally, number 3, it meets the respective objectives of section 3.1 and 3.6 of our municipal development plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Any comments or questions from the public? And I'll ask council, is there any questions? Not seeing any, I will close the public hearing for bylaw 2017-2, and we're now back in council. Council's with Brenda.
I move second reading for bylaw 2017-02
Okay,
with
and
the attached
there's just the bylaw, there's
or
no
with the,
condition.
yeah, thank you,
Okay, thank you.
recommendation.
Is there any questions? All in favor? Carried. Brenda?
I'll move third and final reading.
Brenda's moved third and final. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thanks for coming in. And I'll open the public hearing for bylaw 2017-05. Proper notification's been done, Gary?
Mr. Chairman, yes, as per the Municipal Government Act, they have been.
Is there any member of the public have any concerns or of any councillor listening to this public hearing? Not seeing any, please continue.
You're receiving a letter of concern objection that came in after the report was prepared, so that's what's being handed out right now.
Okay.
Okay, so redesignation application LU 21707 is tied to bylaw 2017-05. The owners are Adrian Spleet, Glenn Mueller, and Lindy McKenzie. The applicant is Adrian Spleet. The legal description is southeast of 30-24-24, west of the 4th in Division 5. Represents a 160-acre parcel. The existing land use for the parcel is agricultural general district. The proposed land use district is country residential, with the remnant being AG still. Purpose of the application is to redesignate 6.39 acres from AG to CR to accommodate the future subdivision of 2 parcels. You'll see that proposal in front of you on the screen. One is 3 acres in size and the other is approximately 3.39 acres in size. And again, the balance is to remain agricultural general district. The property is adjacent to Range Road 245 and Township Road 244 and is approximately 2 miles northeast of the town of Strathmore. Again, by way of background information, the application is in support of a subdivision, 2-lot subdivision. The proposed area of redesignation is outside of the irrigation pivot radius, which helps explain the unique configuration. And due to the lack of irrigation, is one of the lesser productive corners of the quarter section. The owner would like to redesignate and further subdivide the land for future development for their families, this being the 2 lots highlighted in yellow. From a policy and analysis perspective, on the MDP, objectives 3.1.12 sub 2 and 3.1.1 sub 3 aim to protect and preserve ag lands, agricultural lands in the county. This application removes agricultural land from production, but due to reduced irrigation, there is low productivity from the corner affected. Staff therefore have no concerns with the long-term impact of the proposed land redesignation. And Agricultural Services has also provided a land assessment report, which is attached to our staff report. And for this application, they are supporting the redesignation. The report concluded there would be minimal impact on the agricultural land because of the owner's efforts to remove the least productive land out of production due to the lack of irrigation and there being no further environmental concerns in that particular corner. Furthermore, under the MDP, objective 3.6.1 sub 7, aims to minimize encroachment of residential development on agricultural lands. The owners have proposed a boundary that only encompasses the lands directly impacted by the reduced irrigation from the pivot, reducing fragmentation of the quarter section. With regards to land use bylaw assessment, the proposed use for the land for future residential development is in alignment with the uses set out in the country residential district of our land use bylaw. And setbacks will be addressed at the time of subdivision and development permit, as an allowable 1 acre buildable area needs to be ensured for each residential dwelling at this time, or at that time, sorry. And again, just a note, it's 3 acres and 3.39 being proposed. With regards to external circulation, Alberta Health Services has provided comments. In this case, they have 5. The one that stands out from their typical 4 just express their concern with regards to 3 acre lots being adequate, and can it provide, the applicant needs to provide or show that there's no public health nuisance, and that setback distances from water wells and wastewater will have no concern. This is a technical matter, will be addressed at time of subdivision if the application for redesignation is approved. ATCO Gas, ATCO Pipelines had no concerns, as was the case with Fortis Alberta, as well as TELUS and the Western Irrigation District. Internally, again, touching on agricultural services comments in relation to their ag report, which is attached to their staff report, the proposed subdivision considers the reduction in productivity caused by the pivot corner, thus aims to take the least productive land out of production for estate planning subdivision and land use change. And then finally, there's no factors of environmental concern associated with this application in this particular location. On the transportation side of things, Transportation and Infrastructure Services stated that all approaches must be constructed to county standards. Again, that's a matter we'll deal with at time of subdivision if the application for redes is approved. Our outside engineering consultants also provided further comment with regards to access on the lands, suggesting that the south parcel be off of Township Road 244, as the running it off of the Range Road is too tight and close to the intersection. Again, technical matter, deal with it as subdivision as opposed to land use, but when we did our internal circulation, they covered both bases. Circulation. You have before you a letter that had come in after the report was presented. Otherwise, we circulated to a half a mile around the subject property as customary under the old land use bylaw at the time, and we received no letters of support and no letters of objection, with the exception of the one you now have in front of you. Mr. Chairman, if you like, I can read it into the record, or you have a copy in front of you.
Did we have enough to pass out for the other ratepayers?
Yes, sir.
Just read it into the record.
Okay.
It's not that long.
So we did make some copies available that we had. But. So to whom it may concern, regarding file LU 21707, proposed amendment redesignation of the southeast of 302424 west of the 4th. The concerns are from William and Mary Hendricks, and they own land immediately adjacent to the parcel in question to the east. We are extremely disappointed that 2 acres can be allowed as on such unusual shapes of lot. We really don't want an acreage in such close proximity, but 2? We have many questions or possible concerns. Since we are a busy mixed farming operation. So I guess the first question is, might there be noise complaints based because of our tractors and trucks or cattle operations? We deal with chemicals, seed, grain, fertilizer, and manure. What about the cattle we keep in our yard corrals? Will we get complaints of smell when we clean our corrals? The next point, our site was established here since the early 1900s. My Marion Brackett's aunt and uncle lived here in the 1920s, and other family before that. We've lived here since 1962. If allowed, 3 dogs. There's a potential for 6 dogs right beside us. Next point. We already have an extremely busy corner, and it is a dangerous one. This will likely only make it worse. We heard the comment that any potential buyer should pitch a tent there for a couple of weeks before committing to that location. In brackets, the location could lead to revolving change of ownership, end of brackets. And then furthermore, will 2 wells that close affect our water supply, and we water the cattle from our well? Is there room for proper drainage? It's a very productive 6 acres now. Is the natural gas pipeline too close? Does the pivot come too close? Would you locate there? ? What will the list of conditions include? ? Please put some thought into this development. Are there any solutions? ? Please keep us informed. Mary and William Hendricks.
Thank you.
Continuing on to my staff report. Before council are 2 options. First option being that bylaw 2017-05 be given second reading, and secondly that bylaw 2017-05 be given third and final reading. Alternatively, option 2 is that application LU 21707 be refused and that bylaw 21705 be rescinded. Staff is recommending option 1 approval for the following reasons. Respective objectives and policies of the MDP were met. 2, efforts have been made to take out the least productive farmland or productive land from the quarter section to reduce agricultural fragmentation. And 3, the application meets the regulations and requirements for country residential district and our current land use bylaw, that now being 2016-01. Thank you.
Okay, is there any questions? Bernice?
Could you go over again where you said the approaches into these properties will be?
Okay, so our outside engineering consultant just provided comments and direction. The suggestion, I don't think there was any suggestion at this point. We're just kind of heading it off at the past sort of pre-subdivision comments. If there was a suggestion to have the access come in off of Range Road 245 for this southern parcel, if you see my mouse, they're suggesting that's probably not going to be very feasible because it's too close to the intersection. So I suspect what they're going to want to do is suggest and recommend that any access for the southern parcel be along Township Road 244 at the time of subdivision. And so that would be, their approach would be limited to this location as opposed to the Range Road. There was no concerns with regards to the northern parcel. There is, sorry, just let me backtrack here a bit. Access to the north parcel would require to meet the minimum intersection spacing requirements by in line with AT guidelines. So they're indicating there may be siting issues here, possibly, but we need to look further with regards to Alberta Transportation's guidelines on that. We don't have set policy at the county with regards to how many meters or feet away from an intersection you can have a road approach. So they're raising the flag. Our Transportation and Services and Infrastructure Services Department haven't commented on that other than to indicate the approaches are to be constructed to county standards. Our outside engineers are maybe giving us a heads up potentially.
So there'd be 2 more approaches, 1 on each road then?
What would end up happening is, I'm going to guess based on limitations, assuming they're not trying, the southern parcel is not trying to propose an access off of Range Road 245, that it would be limited along the Township Road.
Yeah.
And then on the northern parcel, they would have to
Yes.
provide an access here, but make sure they meet setbacks, which may mean they need to be pushed up potentially.
Okay.
But at that point, and if, for whatever reason, if they can't meet the setbacks, then the subdivision is not going to go anywhere.
Any other questions? Brenda?
And I guess that was my question, the setbacks on all the parcels. Because of the shape of the parcels, there's only going to be allowed, you'll only be able to build a home in a certain location on the north parcel, and I would think on the south parcel as well, to meet all the setbacks. And I guess my concern is that is a tight corner, not that, it's not that, I guess, but if we're going to redo that road, which is on a future road building, right? So as long as we get the or I had it this morning. What was the? Setbacks.
Through the chair, with regards to future road improvements, no one spoke to that, to the planning department, so we're not aware of anything down the road, and that may very well come out of subdivision. Again, this was to determine whether or not the land use was appropriate. We've touched on some of the technical matters, which again, really belongs in the realm of the subdivision application. With regards to the setbacks, as council will remember, I'm sure because it was just May 2nd, the new land use bylaw adjusted our side yards, rear yard setbacks, as well as front yard. So when we were evaluating this at the get-go, it was based on the old bylaw, which had the 25, 25, and the 125. And it looked like there may have been an opportunity to make the 1 acre fit. Now under the new bylaw, we've now increased our reduced setbacks, if you will, therefore opening up more land. So at this point in time, there's even more likelihood that there's a 1 acre buildable on the site. But at time of subdivision, that's when everything gets drawn out, shown, and then proven out that they can meet the 1 acre.
Because right now, we're not approving 2 lots here, we're just changing the redesignation.
That's correct, and this, I guess this drawing in a sense could be a bit misleading. You are not redesignating 2 separate parcels, you're redesignating a portion out of the existing quarter section that is just over 3.39 acres. And the application for subdivision would come in and potentially break that even further. Or if that failed, I guess they could come in and ask for 1 lot at 6.39 if something was to go backwards on their application for 2 lots.
Okay. Any other questions? Any member of the public have anything to say, please?
Andrew Kamart. I was part of putting this application together. A few items, we talk about the size. Most acreages we do are around the 3-acre mark, and there's more than ample building. When this was designed back in December, we were doing the design under the previous bylaw. So I can guarantee on each of those parcels, we have well over a 1-acre parcel that can be built in now, especially with the side yards being relaxed. The initial proposal was actually, the south road is, I believe, paved up to that corner, and we believe the south road, I'm not sure the numbers on it, to be the busier of the two. What we wanted to do was do a shared approach that straddled the property line between the 3-acre and the 3.39 acre. That would minimize the approaches onto the road, and it's almost directly across from the neighbor's driveway. So we figured that would be the safest place to access the properties. The other thing you can see from the aerial photo is the neighbor's farm. They utilize that corner that the pivot doesn't water as it's less productive land. And that was what we were trying to achieve with this also. The corner doesn't produce as well. You can see it's hard to see on this aerial photo, but we could see the pivot when we did the design. And we took from the end wheel line, offset to the end gun, and offset again to ensure that all the irrigated lands stay outside of the subdivision. So that's to address the farmland item. As far as they talk in the letter about water supply, at subdivision time, I believe a water report has to be prepared as well as a private sewage disposal. So I think that would address those concerns. And the pipelines are far away from this. We initially looked at doing this development in the other unirrigated area to the north, but because of the pipeline in the well site, we stayed away from that and proposed this southern portion. So that maybe answers a few questions as to why it's there and the shape and the sizes.
Okay. I'm thinking the other parcel being there because of the irrigation, I think it was built in the 1900s and pivots just come out a few years ago, Andy. Relatively newer anyway. Okay, any other comments from the public? Go ahead, please.
My name is Donna Hendricks. I did not put a letter in. We farm the land straight to the east and to the south. Our home is Kitty Corner on the northwest of 2424. This is the family farm. We're very concerned with proximity of more people. You don't know what you're going to get. Are there any architectural controls? Can people just throw up a trailer and their junk and have all this stuff in the corner right adjacent to our farm? My son is very interested in taking over the farm one day. So as we retire, we may not be in this picture, but he will be. There's cattle in the yard. If there's dogs, if there's animals, they can be out running in the fields chasing our cattle. We feel that corner is very productive from what we can see. It's not like it's a dry land. It's a dry land corner that doesn't get irrigated, but it is extremely, it looks no different than the rest of the field as far as we can see. I get that acreages are allowed on corners and different areas, but having two doubles it. That just is, that makes it worse for us. You've got two different neighbors now to contend with and be happy with. And we utilize that west driveway, the one that comes up, I guess, against the north part of that, the north acreage. Are their driveways going to be offset? Are we going to be, I mean, is there going to be conflict with that? Everything that was in Mary's letter, Mary and Bill's letter, I agree with. I know there's people who complain about the smell. We clean our corrals, and then they complain because they can smell it. Well, we just have some concerns about it. We'd rather there was nothing there, obviously. I don't think anybody would want that, but it's also an extremely busy road. Township 244 is very busy. There is a yield sign heading south on Range Road 245 there there's a yield sign heading east on 244 that very few people read or comply with. We've had to stop there and wait for traffic. So if you're adding 2 acreages in now, what are they putting in their acreage? Are they going to have trees there too? There's trees already in the yard, which is, if there's more going down the road, now you're just increasing the risk of an accident happening. I'm surprised nothing has yet and I feel that there should be some kind of control on that north drive heading south on 244. Coming south, there should be a stop sign at the trees at the intersection because you can't see what's coming through from the east. And if you're adding in another approach here and another approach on 244, that approach on 244 is going to be an issue, I think, too. So those are my concerns.
Okay, just to be plain here, you're a different landowner or a different farmer than the letter we received?
Yes.
So this is like
But we we crop share and farm with Bill and Mary Hendricks, and our cattle are in their yard. That's our cattle predominantly. We farm, our home is about a quarter of a mile south on 245, Range Road 245. And we farm the land right up to 244 there.
Okay.
So we predominantly do all the farming. So we're coming in and out with Mike's coming in with equipment and out, and Brad, and so those are some of the concerns. They're going to come to us if there's issues, right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other member public have any concerns? Please.
My name is Mary Hendricks, so I'm the one that helped compose the letter. My biggest concern is when I hear this reason for being able to change the land use as to being least productive. That is in no way true. That corner is not the least productive. There's some least productive land on there, but it's not on that corner. That corner has always produced very well. The year that Cattleland had the corn, regardless of where the pivot goes, that corner was just as productive as the rest. So I have issue with that. Our other concerns were well addressed already, but I just don't like that in there, that is not productive land.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or concerns of the public? Please.
Hi, I'm Lindy McKenzie. I'm one of the owners who's got the proposal for the 2 subdivisions, or I guess at this point, we're just looking at going from ag general to residential. Thank you. Sorry. Okay. Anyways, yes, it's not the least productive land there because there are sloughs. It is the least productive farmland. We cannot farm the sloughs. So this land has been farmed for us by Cornerstone for, I guess, the last 10 plus years. And as they've indicated to us when we went to them with this proposal, with the size of their equipment and with the fact that it is dry land, it is definitely the least productive for them and the most difficult for them to farm right into the corners. So this is the particular area, and this is why that we've chosen this particular area in our estate planning. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other comments from the public? Concerns? Councillor Brenda?
I guess my question would be back to the owner. Again, why 2 lots? Why not just one large lot?
Please come back up to the podium, please. As mentioned before, we are recording. That's how we catch your pretty face on the camera.
The reason that we're going this route right now is there's 3 of us who are owners on this particular property, and we've got 4 kids involved. So we're looking at our avenues on the estate planning side.
Rex?
Mr. Chairman, would it be okay if I went to the podium and used the computer for a second?
Sure. As long as it pertains to this public hearing.
Yeah, we're not surfing. So I just wanted to, so when I sit behind that chair and I do look at applications on my own, I'll look up the map myself. It just gives me a little bit different perspective. Sometimes the maps that come through aren't as clear for me, but I'll just show you where I'm going to come from on this point here. Okay, so you can see at the bottom right here, that's Bill and Mary Hendricks's place. And then this would be the subject property that we're talking about today. So for me, I usually, put a lot of weight into our agriculture service report. I guess this was probably the first time that I do have an issue with it, because when I look at this parcel, and I'm not sure how current that is, it usually says 2017, but I'm assuming that can't be, that's got to be like 16 or something. But when I'm looking at the productivity of this parcel of land, to me, it looks fairly even across the whole parcel. When I'm looking at how cut off or segregated it is from the rest of the parcel, where we have other applications that come in that cannot be farmed really reasonably with a 60-foot drill because 2 passes and it's done type thing. I just want to look at this from a reasonable aspect. If I look at this whole parcel, this corner here to me is no different than this corner is to this or to this one or to the center. So to me, just in my opinion, sitting back there, that this is a fragmentation in my opinion. But I think this Google map actually offers a clear view of what that whole parcel is like.
Any other comments on that map while it's up? Brenda?
So the quarter line is down here by the township. That's the quarter line there. So which they already have some corrals and buildings on down in there. So versus, so was that corner ever looked at?
That's not the corner we're questioning.
I know that, but I'm curious if that's the case.
Can you go back to the last map? So those structures that we see down in this corner, this is the neighboring quarter. This is not the land.
But there's corrals on that side too.
I think the quarter line, yeah, there's some corrals.
Yeah.
We did look at this corner. What scared us away is with the new regulations with wetlands, we didn't, anytime we see a puddle on a aerial, we stay right away from it now because of the studies that can be involved in the cost to do those. With there being low wet area over here, we stayed away from it. We certainly agree this is productive farmland. What we were going for was less productive than the neighboring land. Irrigated land traditionally has better yields, and on the aerial photo, yes, it's broken land, it's seeded land, it looks green as it's growing. You would see it at harvest time. You have better yields off of the irrigated land versus the corners. We did look at the northern corner. Like I said, it was a well site and a pipeline that scared us away from that corner, and the bottom corner with the wetlands. The south road is the busier road, so we are trying to stay off the south road, and that's why we were proposing a shared approach on the east side off the Range Road 245 as opposed to access onto Range Road 244. So when we were looking at this quarter trying to pick where it would best suit these parcels, that's how we came to the southeast corner of that parcel. So just our thought process.
Okay, any questions for Andy while he's up there? Okay. I'm just curious as to when you were proposing all these, did you go and have a visit with the neighbors? Tell them your plans? Okay. Any other questions? Any comments from the public? Council, one more time. Any questions? Alice?
So going back to Andy, on that north east corner, it looks like there is a bigger issue with productive land up in that area, right? So even with the pipeline, you can come south of there, right? Did you consider that? Because to me, if you look at that whole area up there, you do have some, you know,
Yeah, I see
wetlands
the
in
area
a
you're
way. Yeah,
The pivot, as you can see, the pivot comes right to the road on the east side. And so we were trying to keep the development completely out of irrigated land. And when there's a 100-meter setback from all wellheads, so we essentially took the same design and mirrored it up in the top corner.
Right.
But by the time we did the setback from all the boundaries and the setback from the wellhead, there's no building
Site.
parcels there.
Okay.
And so we really didn't want to go into irrigated land. And so that's why we didn't put it like 2-3 acre squares on the east side, because then it would be irrigated land. That's why we chose to take this southeast corner out. The applicant would probably be open to that if that's more favorable, but I don't think that's achieving the goal we're trying to do here. I think that would be fragmenting the parcel more for farming, and I think it would be taking up the irrigation land as opposed to the corner, which,
So
like
are
I said,
you-
you
are
can
you-
see on the neighboring parcel, they develop the corners. Farmers tend to develop the corners because they're the less productive area
Yep.
to.
So I want to go back to that northeast corner.
Yep.
So are you saying that corner is all irrigated too?
No,
Exactly.
the northeast corner, the irrigation doesn't hit it just like it doesn't hit this corner.
Yeah.
When we try to take the same development and put it in the top corner, there's not suitable building spots on the land that isn't irrigated because of the setbacks
Yeah.
to the wellhead, the pipelines, and the boundaries.
Yeah, I realize that. But can you not go to the west of that, where your pipeline is? To the west and to the south? Northeast, south, yeah. If you wanted two parcels. Because to me, that land doesn't look as productive as what we have down here. And I may be
Are
wrong.
you talking about the lighter area kind of in the middle of the southeast of 30?
Right next to the road, south of the pipeline.
That is irrigated land there.
It is,
That is
okay.
irrigated. We could do the parcels there, but they would be within the range of that pivot on that quarter.
Okay, that was my question. I wanted to know if that part was irrigated as well. Okay, you've answered
don't
that.
go away.
Okay, thank you.
So flip that to the other side where the old buildings are, if you go over to the other map, because what used to happen was it was owned by one and the corrals moved. So what's happening to the existing old corrals sitting there that are falling down now? So I guess my question is if you'd taken that and flipped it to the west side of the property line, then it would be utilizing an old farmyard as it is now. So I guess that's my question, why didn't that happen? Because this.
Yeah, so you can see, I agree. So if we took that design, and I could even plot it on, so you can see they farm up to this corner, but there is a section right here that doesn't receive irrigation and isn't in farm production. What made us stay away from this, like I said, was one, the wetland and the buffer zone. The second was accessing off this highway, or Range Road 244. We thought those two items made this less appealing as opposed to this corner, to keeping the traffic off of this road and staying away from those sensitive buffer zones. We absolutely looked at all three corners when deciding which corner to put this or propose this development in.
Any other questions? Any more questions, comment from the public? Council? Gary?
Before, if you move on, just so you know, Russell's entered the room. If there's any further questions with regards to the ag assessment and the viability, in the report that's attached, Russell Mentroff will be here to assist in any way he can.
Okay, any questions? Any questions?
So, yeah, Russ is here, so I'd like to hear what he has to say, I guess, about the difference in production on the land on that one versus other corners or...
Through the chair, this file from I guess an ag land quality standpoint, on our ag land assessment form, it scored a 2.3, which generally we would suggest denial for. So it is high quality land. Our reasoning behind it was because it was in a pivot corner. From a productivity standpoint, it would be less than the balance of the piece, because it wouldn't be irrigated, as well as from a severance standpoint. It's not, making a severance in the middle of a corridor from a country residential parcel. It's right in the center. So from a farming perspective, I think it makes sense to have the parcels there.
Okay. Brenda?
The question, and just before you'd come in, we talked about flipping it to the other corner, so that it misses the pivot on the other corner. If it misses one corner, it'll miss the other corner, right? So the question is the difference in, it was Rex that brought it forward, that he showed the map where it looks like it's less productive down in the other corner. So I guess that's a thought. I don't know, can you show the other map?
It's not for us to decide, though.
I know, but was there any?
It's not an ask. I'd like to keep to the topic. The one now is the one where it is. Okay? The rest would take another application. Right? I guess for me, when I see it, I don't see any pivot mark, which I know I see in mine. I farm pivots. I would never give up a corner. And we've also had a couple complaints from adjoining property owners too. I take very seriously. Well, that's my 2 bits. Anything else? Anything else, Mary?
Through the chair, I would not be opposed to a reapplication for that other corner. I don't know if I'd worry about that wetland until you find out more about it. I can't see where that would be that big an issue. There's a lot of acreages that are in funny places, so. But we would really appreciate not having it across our driveway and across our place.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions? Nothing? Nothing?
Comment, I guess. Just because it doesn't lie on a corner. Most pivots have corner arms now, which is
Some.
But I mean, it's not
possible.
unfeasible, I guess.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I'll close the public hearing for bylaw 2017-05, I believe. And we're now back in council. Council's wishes.
I move bylaw 2017-05 for second reading.
Okay, Alice has moved second reading. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is defeated. Is that an automatic rescind of the motion of the bylaw? Ellen? Busy. Is that a rescind of the bylaw when we have second reading lost? Okay. It's just never got, so it's just lays there now? We can have a motion to rescind the bylaw? No, it just doesn't, but bylaw is still there. If we want to rescind it or not. That was part of the option. You can rescind the bylaw. Okay. Brenda's moved to rescind the bylaw. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And I'd like to get this one done too. These people have been waiting a long time for public hearing for bylaw 2017-08. All the proper notifications been done.
Mr. Chairman, yes, under the MGA, the proper notifications have been done. I'm not sure if this was mentioned when the agenda was being set this morning. However, we are asking that the public hearing be basically put off simply because the application was to go from agricultural general to agricultural small holdings. And once the new bylaw came into play, that took out the agricultural small holdings district. The parcel, therefore, based on its parcel size and criteria, still stay ag general. So there is no need to rezone the lands under the new land use bylaw. So the request from staff, and it's attached to the agenda, the RFD and 3.3B, is that we're seeking for council to rescind bylaw 217-08.
Okay.
The question is do you just want to open and close the public hearing? The landowner and adjacents have been notified, but there may be somebody here who may want to speak to it, and it was advertised accordingly.
Okay. Yeah, and we are in the public hearing. So are there any questions? Any member of the public have any concerns or questions? Council, you've heard why it's here? Okay. Not seeing anything, I'll close the public hearing for bylaw 2017-08, and we're now back in council. Council's wishes. Rescind bylaw would be a good motion. Rescind the bylaw, because we don't need it anymore.
To District of Agriculture Small Holdings District.
So you're moving to rescind the bylaw 2017-08. Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we'll do the two first readings at a request. Agenda 3.2A, bylaw 217-11.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is first reading bylaw 2017-11 to redesignate the Southwest 18-24-24 west of the 4th. Staff's recommending that council approve proceeding with first reading of bylaw 2017-11 to redesignate 4.04 hectares or 10 acres of the Southwest 18-24-24 from agricultural general district to industrial general district. Show the bylaw map. This is the bylaw map. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Rex?
I will so move first reading of bylaw 2017-11.
Okay, any questions? All in favor? Carried. And first reading for bylaw 2017-20.
This is first reading of bylaw 2017-20 to update the Cheadle Hamlet boundaries. The recommendation is that council approve proceeding with first reading of bylaw 2017-20 to update the Cheadle Hamlet boundaries to correspond with the Cheadle Area Structure Plan. Just go down to the,
you're gonna tell us some more?
Yeah, I'll tell a bit more. So these are the proposed hamlet boundaries. As you may recall, the Hamlet of Cheadle Area Structure Plan received first reading, I believe it was in April. Yeah, it was April while I was away. And it's now going to be going back for public hearing in the next few months or so. So this is just for first reading of the boundaries. When the area structure plan comes back for public hearing, we'll bring this boundary bylaw back as well for public hearing and potential second and third reading.
Okay, thank you. Council's wishes.
Also move bylaw 2017-20 for first reading.
First reading. Any questions? All in favor? Carried. And we just got these two left to do. I'd like to do that before then we'll have a short break.
I need to leave. We need a break.
We could be done in 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Yeah, I need a break too, so 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
You and I'll be both running in the same direction.
Okay. Okay, safety code permit refund. 3.3A.
Also move, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, is there any questions or concerns? All in favor? Opposed? Which way did you vote?
Whatever the recommendation is.
Carried. Request for decision, request to rescind bylaw 2017-08.
Mr. Yeah.
That's the same, that's one we already done. Correct. So that's done. Break.
Good, thank you.
I think you asked for 1 minute. I'll give you 2.
30 seconds.